What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into a very special, I guess. It's weird. It's the start of June, and you know what that means in the NBA world. The NBA Finals are finally upon us. This year's 2025 NBA Finals, you guys know, is between the Oklahoma City Thunder, one-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder, and the four-seeded Indiana Pacers. Excited to get into it. Before we do all that, I am your host, Robbie Haytayan. Joined with me is my co-host, Seamus Zarlingo. Seamus, here we are. Started June. Celtics fans, obviously, we talked about it before the show started. A little weird. Did not expect this. Did not have this on our bingo card in terms of the Eastern Conference champion Indiana Pacers. Here we are, the start of June, the start of the NBA Finals. Tip-off on 8:30 this Thursday, just in 2 days, almost 2 days, 48 hours to the T. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to dissect about this series. It should be a good one. I want to kind of just start off here with our initial thoughts. Where are you at? How are you feeling? Kind of your perspective going into this.
Well, I've been kicking myself ever since we had the conference finals preview. Why did I believe in the Timberwolves so hard? I have no idea. Like, literally, it was the first, I want to say it was 18-16 in game one, right? The Timberwolves jump out to an 8-0 lead in game one in Oklahoma City. I'm going, okay, good start with the T-Wolves. When it's 18-16 after a start like that, I was already going, okay, see, this is not going to be good for the Timberwolves this series. And of course it wasn't, and the Oklahoma City Thunder overran the Minnesota Timberwolves to make it to this point. But that's what the Thunder have been doing all season long. They've been clearly, in my mind, the best team in the NBA all season. And I was a little confused as to why the Celtics lost the title odds favor. The Celtics, they went from being favorites in the title odds in November, December, January, February to being second behind the Oklahoma City Thunder back in March when the Thunder beat the Celtics at the TD Garden. At that point, I was thinking, how did this not already happen? It made no sense why the Celtics didn't extinguish that number one title odds favorites title to the Thunder earlier on in the season, because the Thunder, they really had no trouble this season. If you look at the three teams at the top of the NBA in 24-25, clearly the three teams over 60 wins. It was the Thunder, it was the Cavs, it was the Celtics. And if you look at those three teams, the one team who was really hitting on all cylinders all year long, it was the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they had defensive concerns. They really just outscored everybody. And obviously, when it came to the playoffs, a couple of their guys got injured. You look at the Celtics, we've been covering them all season long. When it came to the Celtics, it felt like they had a complete unit. However, it was always a question of whether or not the Celtics would actually flip the switch. And that was never a question with the Thunder. It was never the Thunder never had defensive questions, never offensive questions, never had questions of whether or not they were going to flip the switch. They were on it every single night throughout the year, won 68 games, blew past the Grizzlies in round one. Round two, scuffled a little bit with the Denver Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, however, then blew past the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals and now find themselves in the NBA Finals against the Indiana Pacers, who are 1,000% the surprise team of these NBA playoffs. And really looking at the Pacers coming into the playoffs, it was known the Pacers were on the uptick, on the uptrend. However, that came to fruition full time in the NBA playoffs with the Pacers in round one. It was evident from game one of round one. It was the Pacers and the Bucks. They kicked off the NBA playoffs. From that game, it was clear the Bucks had no chance in that series. And then in round two, the Pacers, they steal the first two games in Cleveland. They beat the Cavaliers in 5. And then eventually in round three, they go and handle the Knicks in 6, steal more games in that series. And that's been sort of the name of the game for the Pacers in these playoffs is stealing games, especially on the road. You think in game 5 in round one, this game was at home, but the Pacers, I believe they're the first team in NBA, they have to be the first team in NBA history to come back down from a 7-point deficit 3 different times within the final 90 seconds of a game. That happened in game 5 against Milwaukee, game 2 against Cleveland, and then of course game 1 against New York. So this Pacers team, we think about the Thunder blowing past teams. There's going to be a moment in this series where the Thunder are probably up 20 on the Pacers. However, the Pacers have shown they're a team that can always will themselves back into a game and can always with their style of play, with their pace, with the amount of volume of shots and opportunities the Pacers gain for themselves, they're a team that's always going to be in a game and owning a chance within a game to win. And so both of these teams, I think now the Thunder are clearly the better team because obviously the Thunder, they've been the dominant team all season long. Meanwhile, the Pacers have been the surprise team in the NBA playoffs. The Thunder are clearly the better team. However, in this series, Indiana does have a couple of outlets to make this an interesting series because if you look at the entire league, Indiana and Oklahoma City, now they're a little different, but they match up play style well together. Like you don't have a predominantly half court team versus a transition team. You have two transition teams. This is going to be a fast paced series up and down. This is going to be a series between two teams who like to create turnovers, like running in transition, like getting easy buckets. And whoever wins that battle is going to win the series. Now, OKC, they've been the clear beneficiary of that all season long against every one of their opponents. And whether that can come out against the Pacers or not is to be foreseen. A lot of people project it that OKC will do that this series because OKC owns a wider margin of error in this series. However, Indiana, with what they've been able to do this playoff run and even last playoff run, you think about in 2024, we saw that as a little bit fluky, a little bit like, oh, they're here, they beat the Knicks and they beat the Bucks in round one, and now they're here against the Celtics. Well, it seems a little bit more. It seems a little bit more substantive that the Pacers are in the finals now, or at least their team feels like it has a little bit more substance behind it in terms of their ability to actually go out and win meaningful games. Because now you're sitting here as the Indiana Pacers conference finals run last year, NBA finals run this year. And I kind of look at it right now and go, okay, Indiana, they beat a 60 plus win Cavs team in round two. This, I believe, is a different animal in OKC in the NBA finals. I think OKC was a peg above the Cavs this year. You'd have the Cavs, the Thunder, and the Celtics all in the same category, but it just felt like the Thunder were a little bit above them. But the Pacers beat the Cavs in round two when everybody expected the Cavs to blow past the Pacers. Now I look at the NBA finals and go, well, why can't the Pacers surprise more people? I generally think the Thunder have many advantages that we'll talk about in this series. But it's not to say that the Pacers can't make this series interesting and can't make it a more interesting NBA Finals than people might project initially.
I agree. I mean, you know me. I've been on Indy for some time now. Did I think an NBA Finals appearance was in store for them? No, I didn't. I don't think anybody did. But here we are, and I think you nailed it pretty solid there. I will say though, from a numbers perspective, if we're looking at a portion size throughout the course of a season, I agree. I mean, in this instance, right? I mean, this Oklahoma City team is Goliath, right? They are that good on paper. Historically, you stack them up against the all-time great teams. They have the MVP. I mean, really. But when you look at a sample size, if you dilute it down to these past 16 games each team has played in these NBA playoffs, numbers-wise, it could be a pick 'em. But off of how each team has played initially, what I that you made, I really like, and it leans me towards being benefiting Indiana. And this is going to sound a little weird, but it's last year's series against Boston, which makes me feel really comfortable about Indiana coming into this series. Indiana was able to take a Boston team that was arguably at par with this OKC team, if not a little bit more dominant last year. They took them to a very competitive 4 games. And if there's one thing if there's one thing Indiana has done this year, it has been closing out an execution, right? You mentioned it 3 times now, this playoffs, where they've executed down the stretch. Now, OKC, on the other hand, really hasn't had to yet, right? Like they haven't really been in many
Been
clutch
some mixed
situations.
results too. Like game 3 in Denver, that was not the best showing.
It wasn't. So it's that I guess is up in the air in terms of Oklahoma City's ability to execute down the stretch. But I look at a team like this Indiana team. They got some experience. They went through a pretty competitive series just a year ago against a team in my eyes is right up to par with this Oklahoma City Thunder team. So initially, I think this is any basketball head's dream, right? This finals. I think this is two teams that are just play sound basketball. They get it done on both ends, right? Is it the Lakers and it the Celtics? No. Is it LeBron and Steph? No, it's not that, right? It's not as glamorous name-wise, but in terms of hoops, right? What type of series can deliver some awesome hoops? I think this series has that all over it. I think these are two teams that play some stellar basketball, Seamus. And something you mentioned in our Eastern Conference Finals preview, you got a lot into lineups and depth. And this kind of ties back into what I just made, this point I just made, and you made it too. This team's very similar. Like if you go down the depth charts, right, and who's playing, Indiana they go about 11 deep, right? They've tapped in 11 deep, but both teams kind of playing and backing both 9. They go 9 deep. Statistically, they're very similar. So I want to get into these lineups because I'm looking at it, and you got Jarice Walker, Thomas Bryant, Shepard, kind of the bottom portion of Indiana's rotation, who have been contributors, but really just spot players, right? They're playing spot minutes. Same thing with Oklahoma, less so though, more so in Isaiah Joe, who has been a more consistent spot player, in Kendrick Williams and those guys. So I'm interested to hear your perspective, because I think comparing and contrasting these lineups and these depth charts I'm looking at here, there's some stuff to get into.
Well, just looking at it off the bat, I would say that, these are the two deepest teams in the NBA playoffs. And
No doubt.
what's really shown itself here in these NBA playoffs is the importance of depth. And I was wondering this morning, I was thinking, has the new CBA worked? Right? Has the new CBA worked in terms of, we don't see teams, we're not seeing teams anymore with, oh, here's a big 3 or a big 4, or here's a huge star duo out there, like the Phoenix Suns, right? The Suns, they tried to gather up Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Oh, here's our big 3. The rest of the roster is absolutely garbage. And where are the Phoenix Suns? Not even in the NBA playoffs. Didn't even make the playing game. And so you look at that, and I go, well, these two teams right here, Indiana and Oklahoma City, they're the epitome of the new era of the NBA. 100%. It's about depth, and it's about non-traditional stars. You think about all of the stars we've seen in the past in the NBA Finals. Even this decade, we saw Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, Giannis. They were all in the NBA Finals this decade. LeBron as well in 2020. And now, even Luka last year. This year, we don't really have that same star power. Yes, we have the MVP of the league, who's still, I don't want to say on the come up, right? But he's on the come up as now he's won MVP. I think people will give him a little bit more respect. But you just look at the non-traditional stars in this matchup between these two teams. We talked about in the first round. Is this going to be, are these NBA playoffs going to show the new era of the NBA? Is the new guard going to take over? And by the time we reach the conference finals, we can answer that question. But even more so in the NBA finals, these two teams right here, this is the new era of the NBA. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander drafted in 2018, Halliburton drafted in 2020, and those are your two top stars in this series. And looking at the rest of the rosters, it's just full of depth. We don't have secondary stars. You think about, Siakam. You could look at the Pacers. You could look at Miles Turner as well. And Oklahoma City, you have Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams on the come up there. They will probably be future All-Stars. But you don't have these two teams are not star oriented. They're depth oriented. And I believe they're the two deepest teams in these playoffs. And that's why, not entirely why they're here. Obviously the paths matter, but just the depth in general has gotten both of these teams to this point. And I'll say this though, despite both of these teams having tremendous depth, you mentioned both teams can go about 11 deep. They're probably going to shorten that a little bit during the series. And we saw with Indiana last series against the Knicks. Yes, they went 11 deep, but they were interchanging who were who are the guys that were actually out there on the floor when it came to the 9th, 10th, 11th, even 12th man. If we wanted to talk about that, and it was specifically with the big man rotation. But Indiana, they were able to interchange last series. These are two of the deepest teams, but I'll say right off the bat, Oklahoma City has more versatility. Oklahoma City, they just have a more interchangeable roster. their guards, I think, are way more interchangeable than Indiana's guards. And if you look at just the entirety of the rotation, I think OKC owns more versatility in depth. Their guard, they have a lot more. So if you look at their guards specifically, OKC, I was really adamant about their guard play last series against the Timberwolves. Their guards, OKC's guards, are very interchangeable as forwards. That's why the Boston Celtics were so good the last two seasons. It's you had Drew Holiday and Derek White. They were interchangeable as guards and forwards. You had Brown and Tatum. They were forwards, defending as forwards, but they were handling the ball as guards on the offensive end of the floor. That's kind of what OKC has going for themselves, as a lot of their guards are very interchangeable as both guards and forwards. I don't really see Indiana and their roster shaping out the same way. Indiana's guards are more guard oriented. Indiana's bigs are more big oriented, and Indiana's wings. I have a little bit of a concern with Indiana's forward rotation. If you look at Indiana's forward rotation, the only traditional forward within that rotation is Aaron Nesmith. And Aaron
Right.
Nesmith right now, he's playing with a bum ankle, sprained his ankle last series. We'll have to see what happens in the NBA Finals with Aaron Nesmith and what his availability could be and what his actual ability out on the floor could be with this sprained ankle. But your three forwards, if you're Indiana, it's Nesmith, who's injured, and two bigs, or two forwards essentially, who play like bigs, Siakam and Toppin. Toppin and
Right.
Siakam, they're a little bit more big oriented than wings, like traditional floor spacing perimeter wings. Yes, they can defend on the perimeter, but that's not necessarily their play style on the offensive end of the floor. They're a little bit more big oriented. And that's where I just look at these two rosters and go, well, okay, see, they clearly have the more interchangeable roster. They have more versatility within their depth. I actually think the Pacers starting five meshes well or matches up well with
Very well.
OKC's starting five, but
Very well.
it's the depth. It's really the depth that gets me with OKC and where this team is at this moment in time because really Indiana, their starting five, yes, they match up well with Oklahoma City. However, OKC's bench depth, versatility, and interchangeability 100% surpasses Indiana. And we've talked about it in the playoffs and even before the playoffs so many times. It's important to play different styles. It's important to be versatile. It's important to be able to switch and shift around different lineups. Um, to succeed at maximizing the efficiency of a lineup, whether offensively or defensively, against particular matchups. And in this series, I just feel as if OKC they have more ways to play, right? Because I think a point is going to be early on. Because we talked about the starting five, I think the two starting fives are fairly comparable and match up well with each other. The starting five, you have Hartenstein on Turner, Holmgren on Siakam, Jalen Williams on Neesmith, Gilgis Alexander on Nimhard, Dort on Halliburton, and that's going to go both ways. So that's going to be the defensive matchup for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that's also going to be the matchups for the Pacers as well. And under those circumstances, Indiana they do have a couple of edges here, particularly within their speed, their agility. And we know the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're very agile, they're very quick as well. But just within the starting lineup, Turner, Siakam, specifically with those two bigs, Hartenstein and Holmgren, I don't see them moving as well. Holmgren, sure, but
Yeah. Hartenstein.
Hartenstein, a little slower footed of a big, and just somebody that the Pacers could attack. And ultimately there's not going to be much attacking this Oklahoma City Thunder team, period. Like the Pacers are not just going to be able to hunt the Oklahoma City Thunder as they did with the New York Knicks. Obviously the Knicks, it's like Brunson, it's Towns, it's Robinson, go get them. This is not going to be one of those series. The one player you can hunt is maybe Hardenstein, but this is where the interchangeability comes into play for the Thunder. If
Right.
you're taking Hardenstein out of the lineup, look at the bench. I mean, look at the bench. You could have in your lineup here Gilgis Alexander, Dort, Jalen Williams, and Chet. So those are four guys right there. If you wanted to go a little smaller and play Chet at the five, which is completely, I mean, OKC is able to do that. Chet is gonna be able to play at the five. He's almost a stretch five. The fact that they have him playing as a forward is just a huge luxury.
Oh. Do we have them? We'll give it a second. Okay. Well, I'm going to play off of that as Seamus tries to figure it out here. I look at this series and playing off of where Seamus is going with that. Oh, we got him right back here. There we go.
Technical difficulties,
right.
folks.
You're all set. Take it away. Chet Holmgren in the 5.
No, yeah, I was going to say Chet Holmgren. He can play the 5 for Oklahoma City, and ultimately, I think what Oklahoma City is going to do in this series is you're going to see Hardenstein. He might start game 1, he might start throughout the series, but you're going to see his minutes lower just a little bit. And under those circumstances, you're going to have Holmgren play the 5, who's going to be a stretch 5 in this situation, can move really well. Just one of the best. He is a Rudy Gobert-esque defender by the rim. I mean, it is the stats are Chet Holmgren is already one of the best rim protectors in the NBA, and he's only in year 2. But he's going to play the 5, still have rim protection, still have shooting there. But who you're bringing into the game? Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, and even Kenrich Williams. We saw Kenrich Williams back in the Nuggets series come out and play a couple of minutes there. We probably won't see him a ton in the NBA Finals. But looking at that rotation you have off the bench, if you're the Thunder, Wallace, he's going to be able to defend positions 1 through 3, maybe even a 4. Caruso, he could. We saw in the Nuggets series, Caruso, he could go 1 through 5. He's like a Marcus Smart. He's a legit 1 through 5 type of defender. And then Aaron Wiggins, he's almost on that same level as well. Maybe not as technically sound as Caruso, not as savvy of a defender, but certainly with the size and switchability, you just have so many options off the bench if you're the Thunder, and so many different options. You have different styles to play if you're the Thunder, especially looking at the bench, because you're going to have the MVP. Dort is an all-defensive player. Jalen Williams, I think, is taking strides towards being an even better star than this past season, he was an all-star, but we Chet and Jalen Williams have both been those players. They're supposed to be the second and third best players on the Thunder, but we've looked at them all season and gone, when we're talking about, are the Thunder too young, right? Are the Thunder a little bit too young for this playoff run? We're really talking about Jalen Williams as the second guy and Chet as the third guy, or interchangeably 2 and 3. Jalen Williams, I believe, has taken strides these playoffs to become that certified number 2. Now, I will say it's a little inconsistent, and he's going to have a game, I believe, where it doesn't look great. The example for that earlier in the playoffs was game 6 against the Denver Nuggets. Just did not play great on the road whatsoever, did not play well on the road. And that's kind of why, outside of Julian Strother's shooting in game 6 against the Nuggets, part of the reason why the Thunder weren't able to pull that game out down the stretch, and it was closer than people remember, Jalen Williams couldn't hit a shot. The Thunder team couldn't hit a shot, and that was the Thunder's problem in the Denver Nuggets series. Is Caruso kind of became the second best offensive player at times, which can be a little bit of an issue with this Thunder team. However, it won't be if a guy like Jalen Williams, I think, if he has a big series, that is when the Thunder have the opportunity to really blow past the Pacers. Is if specifically Jalen Williams has a big series. But I just think within these lineups, you have way more interchangeability if you're the Thunder. You have more styles of play to go to, and it all starts off the bench, because the starting 5, I would say the Thunder have a better starting 5 than the Pacers, but the starting 5 is somewhat comparable in terms of offensive, defensive production. Thunder have the better defense. The Pacers, you could say, actually have the more reliable offensive options within the starting 5, because Halliburton and Gilgeous-Alexander, I think Gilgeous-Alexander is clearly a peg above Halliburton, but we've seen Halliburton in these playoffs. He is a certified superstar. He can be a certified superstar. I would say that's a little chalky between Gilgeous-Alexander and Halliburton in terms of their impact. But I would say SGA is a little bit higher of a ceiling in terms of making an impact in the series. But you go down the list, it's like if you're talking about secondary scorers for the Thunder, right? Well, it has to be Jalen Williams. That's why I'm saying, Jalen Williams, if he has a big series, that's when the Thunder can really run ahead of the Pacers. But if Jalen Williams and Holmgren aren't having great offensive series, who's your next offensive option if you're the Thunder? It's Caruso, maybe? Like Dort, he hasn't scored over 15 points in these NBA playoffs, Luguentz Dort. So, OKC, if you look at their lineup in that way, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if he's not scoring, if he's not on for a night, and say Jalen Williams isn't, or Holmgren, where are their scoring options? And I would say too, Indiana, I feel like you have a little bit more reliable, like long-term scoring options than the Thunder, because specifically the 2 and 3 for the Thunder, it's Williams and it's Holmgren. Well, for the Pacers, it's going to be Siakam, and then it's either going to be maybe Nimhard, could be Matherin, could be Turner. Like any of these players, I think Siakam is a little bit more trustable in terms of being consistent than Jalen Williams. I think Jalen Williams clearly has the higher ceiling long term and just in general with his ability. But if we're talking about consistency in the NBA playoffs, Indiana, their offense, I would say Indiana has I think they have a larger ceiling or a higher ceiling than people speculate with their team when it comes to actually scoring the ball on the offensive end of the floor. People understand that they're a special offensive team and people have been giving them praises, but looking at the individual scores, right? Just going away from generally how both offenses run, I think Indiana has a little punch there within the ability to score. The thing is about that is the Indiana Pacers, they're going up against the best defense they faced in these playoffs by far. By far. Milwaukee's defense was laughable. Cleveland's defense throughout the season was a little hit
Mediocre.
or miss. They were more
Yeah.
outscoring opponents the way they won games. And then even in that series against the Pacers, the Cavaliers, they're missing Evan Mobley in that series in one game, and he's not completely right. And he's obviously defensive player of the year is going to be a huge anchor to their defense. Cleveland just didn't quite have the horses they did in the regular season. Even when they did, they weren't always up to par defensively. And then in the conference finals, the Knicks defense, although the Knicks defense was very gimmicky and schematically sound, the Knicks personnel, look at the personnel. It's like Delon Wright, Landry Shamet, obviously Jalen Brunson, huge all-star scorer for the Knicks, but he is somebody the Pacers wanted to hunt on defense. He is somebody the Celtics wanted to hunt on defense. This series, none of that is happening. Unless injuries persist, which we all know injuries do play a factor in the NBA playoffs, as we've seen many times in the past. Unless injuries happen and come to this Oklahoma City Thunder team, the Indiana Pacers are going to be going up against a defense that is they are so the Oklahoma City Thunder defense is so far above any defense the Pacers have seen these playoffs so far. That's going to be the deciding factor in my mind. In spite of the Pacers owning a little, like I believe their offensive options are a little bit more robust, especially in the starting five. OKC's defense and general depth and versatility and switchability, that's going to win them the series, and that is going to win the Oklahoma City Thunder the 2025 NBA Finals. Because when you're able to, I think if the Thunder, when they're able to slow teams down and create turnovers and run in transition, that's when the Thunder just run past teams. And we've seen them do that all season long. It's about slowing down a club, making them play a little frantic, forcing turnovers, forcing deflections, getting out and running in transition, turning those in to easy buckets. Not many teams win in that way. That's the number one way in which the Thunder win. For as great of an offense as the Thunder have had all season long, I mean, they've had a great offense, great defense. A lot of their great offense comes from getting easy buckets in transition, forcing turnovers, points off turnovers. That's a huge thing for the Pacers as well. However, if you just look at the execution of that game plan, right? The forcing of turnovers, defensively switching, making things hard, getting those long rebounds, and then getting out in transition and running. The Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be able to execute that game plan a lot more than the Pacers, and that's something to be said about the Pacers as well. Last series, it was a little bit closer of a series versus the Knicks than thought. Yes, the Knicks were playing from behind for pretty well all of the series, but Indiana, we saw game one. That obviously could have been a loss for Indiana. Game two came down to the final couple of possessions of game two. Game three, same thing, couple extra possessions. In that series against the Knicks, the Indiana Pacers, they benefited heavily off of transition opportunities and just general runouts, outlets. Just the Knicks aren't getting back on defense. the biggest showing of that was easily Game 6 in Indiana. It persisted throughout the series, but Game 6 in Indiana was the worst showing for the Knicks transition defense, and that's how Indiana was able to get easy points in the series. And we see it made a huge impact in the series because Indiana in some of these games, it was a 6 point margin in, say, game three. In game one, it was a 3 point margin. In overtime, it was a 5 point margin in game two. And then I believe, let's see, game four and five, I'm blanking on game four and five right now. Um, but just the small margins in that series, Indiana was able to win these small margin games, right? By taking advantage of an aspect of New York that simply will not be there against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we talk about it's about the margins, right? It's about the little margins you can win, possessions you can win. It's especially important in the NBA playoffs. The Pacers were winning those extra possessions against the Knicks. I think in this series against the Thunder, if the Thunder are winning those extra possessions, where do the Pacers go? How are they going to overcome the Thunder in this series? From that standpoint. It's going to be hard for the Pacers to do. I think the Thunder, just from a lineup perspective, just have more than the Indiana Pacers. I think these are the two deepest teams in the playoffs. But if you look at the depth, especially after the starting five, everybody for Oklahoma City is interchangeable as forwards, as guards, and even you look at like somebody like Holmgren or even the big Jalen Williams, right? The center Jalen Williams, the Arkansas Jalen Williams. Even him, he can be a little bit of a big slash combo forward. I just think for Indiana, you look at their bigs, you look at their guards especially, and even their forward rotation. Their forward rotation, there's a lot to be had there. It's really only Neesmith as the traditional forward. Their two other forwards, Siakam and Toppin, they play a little bit more as bigs, and then the rest of the bigs, Turner, Bryant, Walker, Bradley, they're all straight up big guys. They're not going to be interchangeable as forwards whatsoever. And then off the bench, McConnell, Mathurin, Shepard. Those are all guys who I think Shepard can and Mathurin have the ability to switch a little bit, but they are just McConnell, Mathurin, Shepard, and even Nimhard. You want to throw him in there, and even Halliburton. They are just not as switchable. They're not as versatile as Gilgis Alexander, Wallace, Dort, Caruso, Joe, and Wiggins. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And even Jalen Williams, if you want to throw him in there as well. That is just the bottom line here is the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have a bunch of guards who can play as forwards and can shapeshift within the lineup. Meanwhile, Indiana, they have a bunch of guys who kind of play their positions. They are bigs, they are guards, they are forwards. They are not necessarily forwards that turn into guards or guards who turn into forwards. That's what Oklahoma City has going for them in this series, as well as just the general. I think if you look at the forward rotation, I don't know why it hasn't been talked about more, but Indiana's forward rotation is a little weak. It's like, okay, Neesmith and Jalen Williams, that's not going to be a canceling each other out type of thing. Jalen Williams is going to win that matchup. Jalen Williams is a better version of Aaron Neesmith. I mean, by far. I mean, especially with his ability to handle the ball and score off the dribble. Jalen Williams is a better version than Aaron Neesmith. And if he's going to win that matchup in this series, you look at there's going to be where are the forwards for Indiana? That's what it's so funny. We watch a team throughout the NBA playoffs and we see teams go through ups and downs and play different styles and play different ways. And then you get to the end of the road and you see two teams together in a series, whether it's the conference finals or the finals, whatever. And then you just realize, like Indiana, for all the versatility and depth we think they have, against a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, their versatility and depth, it's definitely a lot. I wouldn't say it a little bit, but it's fairly diminished. I mean, seriously, the Indiana Pacers depth becomes a little bit more theoretical against the Oklahoma City Thunder than realistic the way it did throughout the whole the whole run of their NBA playoff their whole playoff journey so far. I think Oklahoma City, this is just a clear Oklahoma City spot when it comes to the lineups. And it's one of those things that if you really dig down and dig deep into it, I like to just I like to I like to arrange the lineups in terms of, positions of where guys are going to be. And to me, it's just it gives the visual the visual of OKC versus Indiana. it's like in theory, Indiana will have a little bit to play with in this series as they've had throughout these NBA playoffs. But I just think this is going to be the series where we start to see Indiana's depth go away. That's my whole bottom line here is that OKC's depth is going to play how OKC's depth is going to come through like a train, and Indiana they're just going to be ran over. That's how I see the lineups in this series, straight up.
It's tough because I agree. Oklahoma City, from a defensive standpoint, has more versatility. Defensively, I think they can do more on the defensive end of the floor, lineup wise and switchability wise, and from that aspect than Indiana. But I think Oklahoma City has a real flaw within their offense, and I think it started to kind of creep in a little bit. I think it did against Denver. In that
1,000% against Denver.
Yes, and I don't think the versatility aspect from the offensive side of the basketball, which the offensive side of the ball is gonna need to be there if Oklahoma City, because yes, while they're a phenomenal defensive team, this Indiana Pacers team can shoot the ball and they can score in many, many different ways. And that's where Indiana's versatility, I think, creeps in, is their ability to generate offense through a plethora of different actions and sets in ways with Halliburton running the show. So I think from a lineup perspective, right, I look at each side, and defensively, it's not a question, right? Oklahoma City is going to be able to get what they want defensively, right, and get the looks they want from the defensive standpoint, pretty set within their lineup, right? They got those forwards, those 6'6", 6'5", 6'7" hybrid forwards with the versatile wing frame or wingspan, with and all that's from Caruso to Dort to Williams and even Aaron Wiggins in Case and Wallace, right? They're a little bit more versatile than people give them credit for. I will say this: I look at Indiana, and I just want to look at the splits, right, from what they're doing within the ball in the lineup, right? The top two players, Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, and Jalen Williams, are taking 17 plus shots each. 22 if you round up for Shea, 21.6, and 16.8, 17 if you round up for Jalen Williams. That both of them have more attempts per game than the most on Indiana, with his Pascal Siakam with 15.3, then Halliburton 14.6, and then Turner 9.9, Nesmith 9.7, Nembhard 10.3. So my point being is that from a defensive standpoint, OKC is versatile. From an offensive standpoint, this is a very much so a one-headed horse, right? It runs through SGA, right? SGA attacks when he's on the floor. Jalen Williams attacks in the non-SGA minutes and tries to drive the ship then. I see a problem with that, because if you think Rick Carlisle's coming into the series and thinking to himself, we're going to let SGA get what he wants when he wants it at all times, you're very, very mistaken. So mind you, SGA is the MVP of this league. There's going to be a couple games, right? Probably two of them where he's just a force to be reckoned with. But if SGA doesn't have it, where does OKC go? And I think that situation can creep up quickly. And we've seen it as Celtics fans, right? When your star player doesn't have it and other teams game planning so well against them, right? You have this great head coach with a lot of experience. He's seen a lot of different basketball. When they don't have it, does OKC have the offensive firepower to stack up with Indiana? In my opinion, that answer is no. That said, the defensive side of the basketball can absolutely still win Oklahoma City this series. If they are sound defensively, they can absolutely still manage offensively without SGA performing, right? Maybe he has two games, 3 games where he's not there, right? Whatever the case might be. So point being, I agree. Defensively, OKC, powerhouse. Versatility out the wazoo. Offensively, that is where Indiana, from a defensive standpoint, they need to, and I guess this gets into our next talking point, but from a defensive standpoint, right, Indiana's got to, maybe this is easier said than done, right? I'm going to sit here and say it, but it might be way harder to actually perform. But if they can find a way to expose and slow down SGA, that's their ticket right there on defense, right? Because offensively, this is another point I want to talk about from the lineup wise, right? And whatnot. Oklahoma City's 3-point shooting is pretty atrocious. Outside of Alex Caruso, no one's shooting none of the guys in the everyday rotation. There's Isaiah Joe and there's Alex Caruso. Isaiah Joe is shooting 38% from behind the arc, which is pretty good on 3 attempts, 1.1 for 2.9. Right, then you got Caruso who shoots 4. He's 1.7 for 4.1, 41.5. So right outside of those two, you got guys that are shooting some decent, rather high volume threes and not cashing in. You got SGA at 30%, Jalen Williams at 32%, Chet at 33%. You got Dort at 30%, and Dort shooting almost 7 per game. On the Indiana side of things, right? And again, maybe this is trends. Maybe this 3-point shot will stop falling for Indiana, but they're shooting the ball at, a rate. I don't know if it's sustainable. 46 from Siakam on 3.5. You got 33 from Halliburton, which is pretty below average. 40% from Turner. 50% from Neesmith, 48.3% from Nemhard, and then 35.7% from McConnell. If you want to throw Ben Shepherd in there, which he's going to be a spot player for Indiana, if I had to guess this finals, Shepherd is shooting 42.3%. Again, only 1.9 attempts per game, so the volume really isn't there for Shepherd. He's probably only going to get 1 or 2 looks a game. But from that aspect too, in their ability to shoot the basketball, if Indiana's on, it's really funny. This might be Joe Mazzulla's dream. This might be putting Joe Mazzulla's theory to the test. Really, could their threes really more important than twos? Right? Does it catch up in the long run? Because Indiana can shoot the basketball and they can do it, and they're doing it at a very high level. Oklahoma City, on the other hand, has not been able to shoot the ball at a high level from their top half of the lineup. From guys like SGA, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren, they have not been successful from there. And I'm interested to see whether or not that catches up with them, because I think it might. I do think it might. So again, I guess if we look at it from an Oklahoma City Thunder defensive standpoint and an Indiana offensive standpoint, which is where I'll start. Offensively, I think Indiana has to kind of rely on that 3-point shot, because you mentioned it. This is an Oklahoma City team that is really versatile and is really switchable on defense. And I guess from your standpoint, if you're Indiana, and maybe I'm off here because I could be off, because really I've before we started the show, I sat here and I thought about it. If I'm Indiana, how do I attack OKC, which we mentioned Hartenstein, and I agree. I think Hartenstein really, you're going to see his minutes kind of take a hit. This is a
small ball series for OKC.
I agree, right? Because you got Hartenstein playing 24, which really isn't that much, but I think that gets cut to like 16, 15. But like, it's tough. Like does Hartenstein spot in on the Thomas Bryant's minutes? Like, is Thomas Bryant gonna, like, he's kind of their backup big man? Like, do you need Thomas Bryant in this series? And then it gets into but we'll stay on offense, right? We'll stay on offense here for Indiana. If you're Indiana, where do you attack? Because for me, I'm looking at, if I'm Indiana, you got to generate perimeter shots, right? But I'm also thinking, it's tough. If Hartenstein's on the floor, I go at him. If he's off the floor, you can't really go at Chet. Can't really go at Chet, can you?
No, and I think the Hartenstein small ball aspect of this series is you're going to see Oklahoma City gain an advantage athletically and from a quickness standpoint, from an athletic standpoint. I think Oklahoma City is going to gain an advantage in this series from going small ball and leaving Hartenstein on the bench. It's weird how often I mix up Hartenstein and Holmgren in terms of their names, not the actual player themselves. I understand who they are, but on our conference finals preview, it's like I somehow mixed up their names a million times. It's the H's. But anyway, with Hartenstein potentially out of the lineup, that gives the Oklahoma City Thunder a more quickness, athleticism, and just a better downhill attack, and they can still switch on defense. But while I question in a series, I question with Hartenstein out of the lineup in this series, will the rebounding advantage fall towards the Pacers a little bit? Because I think right now, looking at the two lineups, you would say the rebounding is fairly equal. The starting 5 rebounding is fairly equal, I would say.
Right.
But then if you're going to take an OKC big man out of the equation, you still have really good rebounders coming in off the bench. You know, Wiggins, Caruso, Wallace, they can all rebound the ball. Even Isaiah Joe, Kenrich Williams. But if you're going to not play one of your bigs, that's going to play out in terms of the rebounding category just a little bit there. And this is going to be a huge possessions type of series. But in terms of who will Indiana attack in this series, the answer is simply nobody. It's Hardenstein, it's Jalen Williams, the bigger Jalen Williams when he's out there, and nobody else. That's the thing. Oklahoma City, this is the Oklahoma City. I understand the Celtics title was great last year. The Celtics shot a million threes, but Oklahoma City is like, they are just a really great fundamental basketball team in my mind. And when I say fundamental, it's fundamental defensively because they don't rely on their offensive ability and shooting. And that's the thing. We think, oh, threes are worth more than twos. We should just take a high volume of threes and the math will work out over time. Well, how about this? How about easy buckets, right? Easy transition buckets. Oklahoma City this past season, opponent turnover percentage, first in the league at 17%, which is a pretty high percentage. First in the league. Points off turnovers, first, 21.8 points off turnovers per game this season in the regular season for Oklahoma City. These are all regular season stats, but the long sample size of it. Points, percentage of points off turnovers, 18.1%, first in the league for Oklahoma City. Steals per game, 10 steals per game this season for Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City wins by creating turnovers, taking away possessions for other teams, and turning those possessions into possessions of their own. But not only turning those possessions into possessions of their own, they turn those into possessions where they're getting easy buckets. They're getting 60, 70, 80% looks at the rim. And that's important in basketball. And that's why, we talk about fouling. Oh, this is a bad foul. Because say you foul on a three, you're turning a 30% shot into say somebody shoots 75% or 80% from the line. You're turning that 30% shot into an 80% shot. Well, that's what Oklahoma City, they're doing for themselves within their defensive scheme and just within their whole game plan of how to win basketball games. They create turnovers, they get out in transition, they run, and they score points in that way. The defense for Oklahoma City is the biggest spearhead of their team. That's the main focal point of what makes Oklahoma City great. Offensively, I completely agree with you, and we saw it in that Denver Nuggets series. The Oklahoma City Thunder, when Shea isn't on, or say, he's taken out of the game just a little bit, which we haven't seen a ton of, the Oklahoma City Thunder don't really have too many other places to go. That's why I mentioned earlier on in this program, if Jalen Williams has a big series, the forward Jalen Williams for Oklahoma City, if Jalen Williams has a big series and even Chet has a big series, one of the two of them, I'm guessing more Jalen Williams because he has more of that responsibility in scoring. If they have big scoring series and they're on point, they're hitting their shots, this is going to be a blowout of a series for the Oklahoma City Thunder because under those circumstances, the Thunder are going to enact their best advantage over the Pacers, which is their defense, their switchability, their versatility, their transition game. Not only will they enact that against the Pacers, but the Thunder will also enact the fact they'll be able to score in the half court efficiently, effectively, and consistently if somebody like Jalen Williams is having himself a great series along with, say, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. If the Oklahoma City Thunder have two offensive bucket getters, they're going to blow this series out because they already have the chance. They already have the chance to run past the Pacers in this series just with their defense alone. Offensively, if Jalen Williams or Chet really comes to play this series on the offensive end of the floor and their shots are falling, that's when Oklahoma City could just run over the Pacers. And this is, I don't think this will be a sweep. It's hard to sweep teams nowadays, but it could be a dominant series. It could be a series like the Timberwolves Thunder series we just saw, which, the Timberwolves, they win a big game 3, but every single game outside of that was pure Oklahoma City.
Then I
That
have a
could be
question for you.
that could happen in the series though, just because of Oklahoma City's defense and if Jalen Williams comes to play on offense.
So then, if you're Indiana, how do you go about it, right? So are you saying the key here in this series from an offensive standpoint, and tell me if I'm wrong, you can't turn the ball over?
Okay, 100%. That is actually note number 2. Note number 1 is OKC owns a wider margin of error. Cool, whatever. Note number 2, Indiana will need to take care of the basketball. OKC thrives on points off turnovers in transition. Indiana will 100% need to take care of the ball in this series. And I think what Indiana is going to have to do is create a lot of chaos. That's also another note I have in here somewhere is
Chaos.
just they're going to have to create a lot of chaos. And I think they're just going to have to move a lot on the offensive end of the floor. I'm trying to find this note somewhere where I wrote this down, but ultimately it's just Indiana, they're going to have to play quick. They're going to have to play up tempo. They're going to have to play fast. And I just think they're going to have to create a lot of chaos on the offensive end of the floor. You're going to see, I think, what OKC is going to try to do here is they're going to try to take the ball out of Halliburton's hands, which we've really let's see. We've really seen in past series and past games in general with Halliburton, he can be a very unselfish player. He's a player who makes the right play and he doesn't mind playing off the ball. Well, in this series, I think if you find Halliburton playing off the ball, that's going to become a major advantage for OKC because under that circumstance, you're probably looking at a more half-court oriented series, which is where the Pacers don't want to play because they're the best transition offense in the NBA. And also, this series is a series between the best transition offense in the Pacers and the best transition defense in the Thunder, which again goes back to the point of some of the opportunities the Pacers have seen all season long and against opponents in the NBA playoffs. They're not going to be there against the Thunder because this Thunder defense is just at another level. But if you see Halliburton playing off the ball, what's going to need to happen is the role players for for Indiana, they're going to have to play well and they're going to have to make shots. If they're not making shots, if and this is where I talk about the margin of error too, where OKC just has a wider margin of error. Straight up, if Halliburton has a great series and the role players don't play well, Indiana is not winning this series. Indiana is straight. The role players need to shoot the ball well. They need to shoot the ball well in the series. They can't be average or below average. If the Pacers role players are offensively average or below average, the Thunder are winning this series 9 times out of 10. And what I think is going to happen is the Thunder are going to try to force the Pacers into playing through their role players a little bit more, which obviously the Pacers are going to try to do that with the Thunder too. But I think it's a little bit easier to do to the Pacers, knowing the style of play Halliburton has, the unselfishness he has within him, versus say SGA, who we all know is the main bucket getter for the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is just one of those. You ask the question, how does Indiana attack Oklahoma City? What do they need to do in order to succeed? That question is almost unanswerable. There's not much Indiana can do to really put themselves as at an advantage outside of really shoot the ball well, play and take care of the ball offensively, and then again create a lot of chaos in terms of off ball movement, a lot of cutting, a lot of quick up tempo movement. Indiana, a general question I just have about this series is who is going to control the pace? Because I think it's easy to say the Thunder will have the advantage in that regard. But if you see the Pacers control the pace, right? If the Pacers are the ones running in transition, if the Pacers are the ones feeding off feeding feeding off turnovers, creating themselves points off turnovers, and the Thunder are the more half court oriented team, and the Pacers are the ones, they're running in transition, they're playing up tempo, they're getting the easy buckets, they're creating a lot of chaos on the offensive end of the floor. That's when you could see, the Pacers, maybe they have a little bit of a dog in this fight. Otherwise, the Thunder, this is the problem with the Thunder in terms of trying to face them. There's nowhere to attack. This is the same conversation with the Celtics last season, where you say the Celtics starting five is out there. It's like, I have Drew Holiday on me. Who am I switching on to? Derek White. No, I don't really want to attack Derek White. I don't want to attack Jason Tatum. I don't want to attack Jaylen Brown. And then Porzingis, he's slower, but he's lengthy, can block shots, deter shots, can mess up your vision on the floor. That's the problem with this Oklahoma City Thunder team, or at least in facing this Oklahoma City Thunder team, is that really Hartenstein is the only player out there I see, and maybe, again, the
Aaron
bigger
Wiggins,
Jalen Williams.
maybe. Or no, Cason Wallace is another one, maybe.
No, but Cason Wallace, even though he's small, he is a great defense. Like Caruso, Wallace, and Dort, that is, I mean, it's like they have that is like a perimeter wall in my mind. It's like, though, if you look at Case and Wallace, his point of attack defense on ball, he is somebody. I texted my friend this morning. I went, Case and Wallace is a defender that should be put on film for kids, players, whoever, for coaches to show kids, players, whoever, how to play defense, at least on ball, how to legitimately defend at the top of the perimeter. Casey Wallace, I mean, he's second year in the NBA. This is what's so crazy about this Thunder team is you have Wallace, you have Jalen Williams, you have Chet Holmgren. They're not anywhere near. They're nowhere near their peaks in the NBA right now. Nowhere near. They're young guys. They're year 2, 3, especially Wallace and Holmgren. But yet they own elite components within their game. Holmgren, the rim protection, Jalen Williams, just kind of being the all-around defensive forward, and then also owning an offensive game, becoming that all-around wing. Obviously, we see with Brown and Tatum. But then Case and Wallace, I don't want to say he's a Marcus Smart, but he's almost like that type of player where I don't trust him totally offensively. I trust him to hit a shot every once in a while. I don't trust him with the ball in his hands. That's not necessarily his role, but defensively, Wallace is he is a. I think he's going to be a special defender in this league, and it's when it goes back to the point too of like when you have great players around you, you're able to like the younger players who have great players around them are going to have a better. I don't want to say better, but an easier trajectory at attaining an elite status in whatever their
Right.
position is in the NBA. Wallace, I look at, he has Dort and Caruso. I mean, he is going to be the future Dort and Caruso for this team, and he's really the present. The present. He plays as many minutes as Caruso, but the whole point is here. There's nobody really to attack on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Every single player, I'm going, not the greatest matchup here, not the greatest. But this is where I think the Pacers, this is where the bottom of the barrel could really fall out for the Pacers. I think the Pacers have quite a few mismatches, or at least the Thunder have quite a few mismatches that they want to attack in this series. Then you look at Halliburton. Halliburton is, for as great of an offensive player as he is, and he owns some. I think he's a better defender than say Jalen Brunson because just the size and length in general, and especially I think athleticism too. I think Halliburton's a little more agile, athletic. But the Thunder are going to hunt Halliburton in this series. They're going to hunt a guy like Miles Turner on the perimeter in this series. I think you're going to see TJ McConnell, if he's out on the floor, he's going to be hunted in this series. And I have a note for this somewhere. See, I have like 4 pages of notes, and I'm just like scrolling through all of them. So right here, I think SGA is going to feel comfortable attacking McConnell, Turner, Hallie, and even Obi Toppin if he's out there. We can get this Obi Toppin, get the switch on him. Not the greatest perimeter defender, more down low rim protector, offensive and defensive rebounding type of player. Nimhard and Matherin.
Nimhard's a tough matchup.
Are better. I think they're better defenders. But those are 2 guys you could convince yourself, okay, maybe if we were to go to our secondary option, maybe we can't get the switch on this possession or that possession against Hallie or Turner or Toppin or McConnell, Nimhard, and Matherin. That you could talk yourself into that a little bit more. But that's where I always look at, like, that's where everybody here analyzing the NBA. You got to look at matchups, right? The matchups are important. The defensive matchups for Oklahoma City are very sound against the Pacers. And if the Thunder want to change that up, specifically with Hardenstein or any of their players, in their rotation, the Thunder have the versatility and depth to do so. Meanwhile, the Pacers, I think the Pacers, what's very evident about their depth is their depth pieces aren't defensive oriented necessarily. And from that standpoint, you're going to see a lot of holes the Thunder can attack, and that can be the difference right there. It's like, yeah, the Thunder have less offensive options, but they have more defensive holes to attack than say the Pacers, who might have a couple more offensive options and own the better robust offense, but they're going to be less defensive holes to attack for the Pacers. I mean, it could just be as simple as that in this series. You have those 2 aspects playing with each other against each other between the Thunder and the Pacers. Just kind of going through general notes here. Um, yeah, I mean let's see. This is another thing I'll say about this. I just want to touch on Tyrese Halliburton in this series, real quickly. Tyrese Halliburton, uh, we saw last series a lot, a lot, a lot of space for Tyrese Halliburton. A lot of space. Straight up. There were a lot of driving lanes. The point of attack, there wasn't a ton of pressure put on Tyrese Halliburton. It felt like he was the true floor general in that Pacers Knicks series for both teams. Obviously, you have Brunson on the other side, but just felt like Halliburton was not only commanding the floor from a scoring perspective, but just from a playmaking perspective. I mean, he was literally a wizard out there. Um, Unfortunately for Washington, not a Washington wizard, but a literal wizard with the basketball. And I just think in this series against Oklahoma City, that space is going to go away. He is going to be hounded by Dort. He's going to be hounded by Wallace. Going to be hounded by Caruso. And even more so, if you get the switch on Gilgeous Alexander or a Wiggins or even a Jalen Williams, even a Chet, it's just going to be really, really, really hard to operate for Halliburton in this series. And I just think the Pacers offense, that's where I really think in this series, um, OKC's D is just too much. I think it's just
Right.
too much. And that's what I can really respect about this Oklahoma City Thunder team is from all, the offensive advancement of the NBA, all the analytics, the shooting, the three-pointers, right? This Oklahoma City Thunder team really prides themselves on defense, really wins games on defense, and they're going to be a historic team when we look back at this season as the Celtics were last year. The Thunder grabbed that title this season because defensively, they're one of the better teams we've seen this entire decade so far. And when it really comes to engagement, activity, versatility, switchability, running out in transition, this Thunder team, what makes them great defensively, not only from a technical standpoint, is just they're faster, they're more athletic. They just they have their activity is a lot higher than other teams. Like throughout the season, you look at the Thunder versus any other opponent. What sticks out is, oh wow, the Thunder, they're just quicker, they're just faster, they're more athletic, they're all over the floor. They're absolutely all over the floor. And that's just to me, the defense of the Thunder this season has been
Right.
I don't want I guess I would call it, I mean, it's been a revelation for the league because I'm thinking, well, teams, if they can replicate this in the future, so like this could be the I don't. I'm. Are we stumbling upon something here with the Thunder? This could be the. I don't want to say the changing of the guard, but in the NBA, what was thought of the last decade really of the correlation of winning, right? It was good shooting, right? Good perimeter play, good shooting, which is still very much the case. Like you still need good shooting, you still need good perimeter play in this era of the NBA, but it's really transition and defense. Those are the
Right.
two aspects of the Thunder and even the Pacers. Like the Pacers, not necessarily with their defense, but running in transition either way. The transition play and the defensive play of the Thunder. I feel like that's kind of uh it's kind of something that teams can replicate in the future potentially and find success with. Because this Thunder team, again, they don't pride themselves on just offense, just shooting, just analytics. Oh, we're going to take a volume of threes and the math will work out over time. It's like, no, they're a physical, grinded out basketball team that plays active. They play up tempo, they play with pace, they force turnovers, and their defense is easily it's the top component of themselves. It's really the defense creating points for their offense. And I just think from that standpoint, the efficiency of this Thunder team, I think you could make the argument that they're charting a pathway of when we look at different eras, this era we've kind of asked, how does this change, right?
Right.
How does the pace, the volume, the three-point shooting, like what is the next thing, right? Because the perimeter play and the three-point shooting, it's on an upward trend this decade. It's like, okay, everybody needs three-point shooting, blah blah blah, right? But it's like, what's going to be the next thing? It used to be in the 80s and 90s, like you needed a big, a good post up big, right? You needed a good post up big who could really rebound for your team, who could really score in the low post. Well, that went away for shooting, and now all of a sudden shooting is around. I'm not saying shooting will go away, but does that kind of say does the shooting maybe instead of it being the top priority, does it become a top priority along with, say, transition play and creating points off turnovers in transition? Because I look at this Thunder team, that is the way they're going to win this series in my mind, is defensively, they're going to turn the Indiana Pacers into a half-court team. They're going to put a lot of pressure on Halliburton to get the ball out of his hands, a lot of doubles, I think, with Halliburton to get the ball over to Nimhard or Mathurin or Neesmith or Turner or whoever out there. The Thunder are going to come in, force the ball out of Halliburton's hands. They're going to cause deflections. They're going to cause turnovers. They're going to create points in transition. And I just think from the matchup of, oh, well, the Thunder in a half court setting just for the game, oh, yeah, we want to attack Halliburton. We want to attack Miles Turner over here. We want to attack multiple Indiana bench players versus Indiana, who's not going to be able to do that with this Thunder defense. The Thunder should – this series – I think it's going to be a little interesting, just game to game, a little interesting because the Pacers have the ability to do that, as we've seen in these NBA playoffs, to play above their level of what we think they are. The Thunder shouldn't lose this series. The title is literally on a golden platter for the Thunder at this point in time. The Cavs are gone. The Celtics are gone. The Pacers are not an easy finals matchup. But the way these two teams match up offensively, defensively, within the lineups, the Thunder just have more versatility, more ways to win. And I think their game plan, if you look at the two teams' game plans, it's about running in transition. It's about creating turnovers, right? It's about playing up tempo. The Thunder have the horses to really execute that plan. The Pacers in this series, I think some of their best ability in terms of doing that is going to be taken away by this Thunder team. I think that's going to be the case.
It's tough for me. I don't know if I can fully agree. So my thing with this Oklahoma City Thunder team, and maybe you can let me know if I'm off here, right? Because maybe I'm off. But there is something in the back of my mind that's telling me, and it might be, the argument might be out the window because they're playing the Indiana Pacers, but the experience factor might just still creep into me.
Okay, I literally have a note here. It says, "Is it stupid to mention the lights could be too bright for OKC?" Question mark.
Right, and we've mentioned on this show tonight that, like, all right, you got Jalen Williams in year 3, Chet in year 2, Case and Wallace year 3, Wiggins in year 3, I believe, right? So a lot of these or Case and Wallace in year 2. A lot of these young guys, you got some experience, some real good experience too, in Caruso, in Dort. Those two guys have played in big games. Hartenstein himself was in a big playoff run last year. SGA has kind of been, he's had his moments on that OKC team, on that Clippers team a while back against those KD teams, that one series. Then he dabbled in the playoffs. These guys all did last year. But I look at Indiana, and this is like a weird dynamic that Indiana has right here. His name is Pascal Siakam. And Siakam showed up last series. He did. He shows up, period. That the guy is Mr. Consistent for that team.
Probably
right?
Becoming the owner of the title of most underrated player in the NBA, where it's like nobody talks about him as a star,
right?
nothing, yet he's dropping nearly 40 points in game 2 at MSG. It's like,
right. It's
like,
like,
have to give him his props here.
You do. And it's an underrated factor. And I do see a path of creating Pascal Siakam mismatches, and only in Siakam. Siakam is their only guy, or that's their path. Would you ask me offensively, how do you create mismatches? It's through Siakam attacking the bench guards, because while Case and Wallace and Isaiah Joe are especially Case and Wallace, are some phenomenal on-ball defenders, the unfortunate factor is, they're small, right? Wallace being 6'3", Joe being 6'4". They're just unfortunately smaller guys. And Siakam in himself is a big, tall, 6'8", lengthy, 240-pound forward. So for me, it's like, okay, OKC has been Mr. Dominant, right? And I don't want to get stuck in a narrative, right, with this Indiana Pacers team because it's glamorous and it's the underdog story, right? And it's all this stuff, right? Kind of like last year with Dallas. Like Boston was the better team. You had people picking Dallas because it was more fun and that you didn't really expect Dallas to get
they
there.
Hated the Celtics.
And they didn't like the Celtics, right? And the same thing goes. Not a lot of people like this Oklahoma City team, right? And it's like this and that. So it's like OKC, you're so right. OKC has been dominant. They have been the best team in the league. They're 68 wins. That would tie the Celtics franchise record for most wins in history is the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. Like they got the MVP. They got depth. They got defensive versatility. Defense wins championships. Everything is telling me OKC, right? But then there's these couple factors. Experience. I do think that I mentioned it earlier. That series against Boston last year might help Indiana this year. And then Siakam, right? Because Siakam, while he probably isn't their like best player, their biggest star, he probably is their like, it's weird. It's a weird dynamic they got there, right? Because on any given night, he can be their number one, but he's not always their number one. And is that a problem? OKC has a number one, right? They know who their guy is every night. But I will say this. For me, in Indiana, I'll 2 points here. One, Siakam, very important. If you can generate some Pascal Siakam creativity in the half court, that's, I think, is your ticket to success in the half court. Along with not turning the ball over, I 100% agree with you. Second one I want to look at here is Tyrese Halliburton. You talked about it a little bit. I want to say it was you who texted me. It was either you or my brother, but somebody texted me, and it was either in the group chat or on the side. And they said, like, I'm watching Tyrese Halliburton, and sometimes I'm just like, shoot the ball. Right. And I don't know if it was you, but
no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
It was not you. Okay. So at times in the Knicks series and even Cleveland and just watching Tyrese, sometimes you're like, all right, I get it. You're a playmaker. You're a phenomenal playmaker. You're really, like you said, a wizard with the basketball. Sometimes it's shed that unselfishness. And he's got the ability to take over a game. And you see it late in games. Like you see it. And maybe that's a pro, right? Maybe Halliburton knows when he needs to turn it on, right? And maybe he'll know when the moment's bright and he'll go and turn it on, right? At times. But to me, there's times where Indiana's maybe floating underwater, right? They're kind of sinking. And you're like, all right, if Halliburton, if you could put that last 5-minute Tyrese Halliburton, we see Mr. Clutch making big plays, getting to the rim, drawing fouls, and step back threes at the buzzer. That Halliburton that is so phenomenal down the stretch. If you could put that into, minutes 9 through 8 or 9 through 6 in the third quarter where there's a drought, you can give me 6 or 8 points there. Then Indiana is that's the one thing that scares me on the Indiana side of things. When you look at the stars, right? It's Halliburton. Can you be more aggressive? Because I agree. I think you said this earlier. It's going to be tough for Halliburton to be the wizard with the ball in the half court with the assets that the Thunder have on defense, right? You got, Caruso and Dort is like a match 7 games of hell, right? In a half court setting. Like they're physical, they're quick, they got IQ, they have been there. They're like, it's just tough.
And they'll be rested too with this rotation. It's like,
right?
That is a huge part of the Thunder too. It's like, these guys are not playing, say like Caruso, he only plays 24 minutes a game just because of how robust the guard depth is. It's like, it's not because we're playing Caruso less minutes. It's because we only have so many minutes to hand out to all these guards. So if you're playing, 25, 30 minutes a game versus 40, you're going to have a lot more stamina down the stretch.
You are. And they're so phenomenal. God, Caruso in that Denver series, and even at times in the Minnesota series, was just phenomenal. Really. And his props goes to Dort too, just from a defensive. They're just so good on the ball and off the ball, and really in all. They're switchable. They're just prototypical what you want on your defensive forwards and guards in the league. So it's going to be tough for Halliburton. It's going to be really tough. And then I flip it over to, and you mentioned it, to the star power, I guess, SGA, right? And Jalen Williams too. I'll touch on him a little bit. I think I agree. Like you said, SGA is going to have more of an easy time scoring the basketball, I think, from a matchup standpoint. I really do think what decides this series, whether or not Indiana can make this competitive and win this series, because I do think there's a world where Indiana can win this series, comes down to Rick Carlisle. Like, can Rick Carlisle scheme out? And we've seen Brad Stevens do it, relating it back to the Celtics, right? In his time in Boston, where your coach, and I do think Carlisle, and he might have a little bit of the coaching, the experience factor. I think, sways Carlisle in the series versus Dagnall, who's a great coach. He just hasn't been there before. Carlisle has more experience within the world of the NBA, being a player and all that. So if Carlisle can cook up a scheme that makes life on SGA difficult, then I'm like, okay, like now Indiana, right now we got a series, right? SGA isn't getting the looks. Maybe you're making him a little uncomfortable. You're not fouling him. I know people free throw merchant, but stop fouling him, right? Name of the story. Learn how to play the defense that you need to play against SGA. There is a path. You can learn it. So that's where I look at, right? SGA, it's not SGA, it's SGA versus Carlisle on the defensive end of the floor for the Indiana Pacers. Can Rick Carlisle and that Indiana Pacers coaching staff figure out a team defensive scheme, right, to draw SGA out of the equation just a little bit more? Maybe that's allowing a guy like Chet Holmgren to, shoot in space, right? Maybe you're comfortable giving up looks behind the arc and you got backside help with Turner, or whether that, whatever it might be, whatever you cook up, you're going to have to do something. And then Jalen Williams, to me, is like the Siakam in a different sense, because Siakam to me is the X factor for, I guess it's Halliburton really, but Jalen Williams, I do believe, is a big X factor here. What Jalen Williams are you going to get, right? If you get the Jalen Williams who we think you are, right, which is that potential all NBA, very Jaylen Brown-esque, if you ask me, type of player, then this is Indiana, and I don't think this is Oklahoma, and I don't think it's relatively close if you're going to get that type of Jalen Williams. However, Jalen Williams is extremely young, right? He is playing. This is the NBA Finals, right? I mean, this is a guy that was drafted in 2022, right? Like he is third season in the NBA. You are playing at the pinnacle of basketball. This is basketball's biggest stage. Do you have what it takes? It's fun. It's a great question to have. But I do believe there's matchups as well for Jalen Williams to score the basketball. In that matchup also, like you said, it generates, I think, really, really what comes down to with Jalen Williams, because he's not phenomenal in the half court. He has his moments, but he's not like this just dominant half court isolation player. He's really successful in transition. And honestly, I will go as far as to say he's almost unstoppable when he's got the ball going downhill in transition. So that kind of goes back to, I do think a lot of Jalen Williams' success goes back to the turnovers. Is Oklahoma City getting turnovers? Are they capitalizing? Are they making Halliburton uncomfortable in generating turnovers there? Because that's really your ticket to creating turnovers with Indiana, because it really runs through two guys. Their offense really runs through Halliburton and Nembhard. From an offensive standpoint, they're really the only two guys generating looks in terms of who's controlling the ball the most at times. So those are my two questions. I guess if you look at the top half of the rosters, right? It's like, okay, Siakam, is the experience of Pascal Siakam going to dominate the Thunder in the series, right? Number two, is Tyrese Halliburton going to take that leap in that ascension to stardom, which I think he can take, right? It's just going to come with a little bit more selfishness in taking over the game at times. Number three, is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander too dominant for Rick Carlisle to into the Indiana Pacers not have the pieces to defensively stop the scoring machine that is the MVP and SGA? And lastly, can Jalen Williams create space in the half court, or is he going to be reliant on transition looks? And lastly, will the Oklahoma City Thunder defensively be so dominant that gives and generates Jalen Williams those transition looks? I think those are, like, from the top half of the roster. I know I just threw a lot of information at you guys really fast, but like those are some big pieces to the puzzle in this series.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Siakam earlier, because Siakam and Jalen Williams, we talk about these, secondary stars. I think they always own the potential to be the X factor in the series. Especially, we've been talking a lot about Jalen Williams, but just with Siakam in general, what's going to be interesting about this series is how much the energy and activity factor comes into play. And that's what's such a big advantage of this Oklahoma City Thunder defense, as well as just the fact that their activity, their energy level, it's heightened. You compared to other teams across the league. I mean, the amount of effort the Oklahoma City Thunder put in on that end of the floor, I mean, they're flying around everywhere. In terms of Siakam, the one thing I worry about with him offensively is if you are forcing the ball out of Tyrese Halliburton's hands on offense. If you're the Thunder defense trying to force the ball out of Halliburton's hands, if that ball goes to Siakam, Siakam has a tendency to slow the offense down a little bit
Yeah,
because the
100%.
Pacers they like to play in transition. They like to play a little bit up tempo in the half court. If Siakam has the ball, we see the tendency of back to the basket, slow it down a little bit, spin move, and then
Spin
he's
move,
getting to a
spin move.
shot or he's getting to a layup attempt. Under those circumstances, I think Oklahoma City's defense could feast in those circumstances and make Siakam a little bit less effective by doubling him, throwing another body at him, making him become a playmaker, getting the ball into other guys' hands. That's where I think this series, I think we could see a lot of doubling here by the Thunder. I think you could
That's
see
I was thinking that.
doubling to Halliburton on the perimeter, forcing the ball out of his hands there, and then Siakam on the low block and even in the mid range, doubling him there, forcing the ball out of his hands, making him a playmaker there, even forcing him to take tough shots. That's where you could see this Oklahoma City Thunder defense, like their defensive activity, their energy. That's where it could really come into play. Is being able to double those guys and force the ball out of their hands, or just in general take tough shots. But I know you mentioned Tyrese Halliburton in there as well. Halliburton, I completely agree with you down the stretch, Halliburton, it's funny because we see so many games where teams make their way back into a game. Say, obviously, the in game one between the Knicks and Pacers, that was the biggest example of these playoffs, although the Pacers have had many examples in this year's playoffs. But game one against the Knicks, right? The urgency behind the Pacers in that game, the way they played on the offensive end of the floor it was up tempo, fast, 3-point shots, open 3-point shots, quick downhill. We're trying to get like as obviously when you're down, 14 points with 3 minutes left, like you need points. You need to play a little bit quicker. And under that circumstance, the Pacers played that way, but also Halliburton, he was much more aggressive in going downhill, getting his shot, actually shooting the basketball. It's funny how we see teams play like that late in games with urgency when they're down, when in reality they should be playing like that the entirety of a game. In game one, that was the nuance down the stretches when the Pacers were playing up tempo and fast and creating a lot of that chaos I was talking about. That is when the Pacers were able to actually create themselves looks, opportunities, buckets. Halliburton was a little bit more aggressive down the stretch. And then in overtime of that game, game one, the Pacers go away from it a little bit. When overtime started, I don't know if any people remember, but the Knicks actually owned that first period of overtime. The first 2.5 minutes of overtime, the Knicks actually won those first 2.5 minutes because the Pacers they slowed the ball down a little bit. They got back into the mud when they needed to be playing a little bit more aggressively. So that's when that's a situation right there. That's just an instance right there where I look at say the Pacers and Halliburton specifically because that's what the point is. That's what the point is here. Under that circumstance, under that instance, it's like that's how the Pacers can gain a little bit more advantage in terms of creating chaos is being a little bit more aggressive with Halliburton. Even when I'm talking about doubling too, if the Thunder are going to go double Halliburton or Siakam on these defensive possessions and force the ball out of their hands, the Pacers have to be ready for the Pacers role players have to be ready to cut hard to the rim. They have to be ready to relocate on the perimeter. They have to be ready to shoot the basketball straight up. And I think the Pacers and every team is susceptible to this. Is like in game one there, the Pacers went up tempo urgency to back in the mud to up tempo, and then they eventually pulled out that game. Can the Pacers continuously put that out throughout an entire game against this Thunder team when the Thunder, I think they're going to be putting out the same energy, if not more energy. This NBA Finals series. We've seen Final series in the past with, here's this veteran-led squad against this veteran-led squad, and they're a little slower and a slow. This goes against every narrative of what the NBA playoffs is supposed to be. This series right here, both teams are going to be playing so unbelievably fast with energy, and that's where I just think this NBA Finals series. I know it's like, this Celtics team. But this final series, it's going to go against the narrative in that way because it's not going to be a slow-paced series, and there are just going to be a lot of nuances between the two teams that I think it's the classic, which advantage which advantage is taken, which advantage plays as a factor, plays as a bigger factor than other advantages in the series. We talk about OKC being um, a little young here. I have written, obviously, I already said this. Is it stupid to mention the lights could be too bright for
Like,
Oklahoma
is
City?
it?
No, it's not. I don't think
Like,
it's not because number one, we've been saying this the whole time. I will say they put some they put some juice on their resume during this playoff run. Think about Minnesota. They handled Minnesota as if they weren't even around. Like you look at Minnesota and Denver last year, it was a clawed out 7-game series. Minnesota this year, looking at the matchups against Denver, it was the same thing. Well, Oklahoma City goes through Denver, and really looking at that series, that should have been a 5-gamer. Oklahoma City lost egregiously in game one. And from there, you see game one. Game three was the game Denver was supposed to have. Game one in that series, Oklahoma City was up 11 points with what, a minute and a half left in that game, basically. So if they win that game, Oklahoma City wins the first 2 games. They're up 2-0. They go to Denver. Say they lose game three the way they did down the stretch. Say then they win game four. They also win game five. That's a 5-game series. They don't win that first game, however. It's 2-2 after game four. Thunder win game four. The Thunder win game five. It's 3-2. Game six goes back to Denver. Julian Strother comes out and he's hot on the floor. If that game six, I mean, look, if game one never happens, game six never happens. And you're only looking at, well, okay, see, if Denver doesn't steal that game one and Denver only steals that game three, there's no game six. That's only a 5-gamer. I understand Oklahoma City had to battle that series. Oklahoma City and Denver battled that series out with each other, but at the same time, Oklahoma City, it just especially near the end of the series, 5, 6, 7, those games. Felt like the Oklahoma City Thunder was like, there's just more to this team. This team should have closed this series out in 5. It was a stupid game one. What happened there? Now, I will say, game one is a little blemish on the resume of Oklahoma City. So is game three out in Denver, no doubt. I'll say that for those 2 losses. But outside of that series, that 7-game series, 4-game series against the Memphis Grizzlies, they come back down from 29 points on the road. Obviously, they're able to win game 7 at home against the Denver Nuggets, and then they dispose of the Timberwolves as if they're not even a viable contender in this league. And now the Thunder, the last 2 years, you go, okay, well, they played a game 6 against the Mavericks. They lost at home. And it's like, oh, they dabbled in the playoffs last year, but hey, they won a first round series against the Pelicans last year, took them out in 4. And then in the second round, they go out to the Mavericks, but that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 playoff series now that they've been through. And they've had resilient moments in those playoff series, especially this year, that 29-point comeback, game 5, game 7 against Denver. And then, of course, every win against Minnesota. So I from that perspective, I want to give OKC a little bit more respect than we've given them this season, because I was on the boat this season of, man, when your second or third best players are 23, 22 years old. We've seen that play out with the Celtics in the past, especially in the 2022 NBA Finals, where, oh yeah, Jason Tatum, 23 years old, is going up against this experienced team in Draymond Green, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and all their role players. Like, oh right, the Celtics were outcoached in that series, and they just what do you call it? The veteran experience just wasn't quite there for the Celtics, while it was there full time for the Golden State Warriors. I've been on the boat of the Thunder, little young, definitely concerns me come playoff time. But they've passed the checkpoints these playoffs so far
they have.
for
They
me
have.
personally to show that they can win that not only obviously they can win the NBA Finals. They're what, minus 750 favorites right now to win the series.
Fourth highest in like the past 20 years.
They're 9.5-point favorites in game one. The Thunder are. They're some of the biggest favorites we've seen in the finals this century. But ultimately, obviously, the Celtics are not the Celtics. The Celtics can win the finals in the future, guys. The Thunder can win the finals this year, certainly. But it's I don't even remember what the point is here. The Thunder, it's like not only can they win the finals, I don't think the experience thing is as big of a thing right
Well,
now
especially
for
against this
this
Pacers
team.
team, especially when because you look at the Pacers, it's not like you're seeing Giannis, right, or Tatum, or someone that's been there before. You're seeing the Pacers.
Right. It's like the Pacers haven't been here either, but it's just I think the experience thing, they have a chance to put that narrative down. Like every single checkpoint the Thunder have hit this playoff run, these 2025 NBA playoffs, they've shown the heart of a champion. Right? Like they took care of business in round 1 against Memphis. In round 2, now yes, there were some blemishes along the way, but you are playing the, you know, best player in the world. I want to say best player in the world, but then it's like, well, the MVP was Shea in that, like it's Shea
Right.
versus Nikola Jokic. But you're playing one of the best players in the world, Nikola Jokic. You win in 7 there. That game 7 at home. Think about how that game 7 started. Oklahoma City, they were down 10. And I remember I went into that game 7 that day. I remember talking to people around me going, this game 7, I know people are penciling in a big Oklahoma City Thunder win, but don't be surprised if they're a little tight in this spot, knowing that like they were here last year. It's like this is where they get over the hump. And we saw in that early portion of that game, they were down 10 points. Like, oh, they definitely look tight. They're not hitting shots. Denver's hitting shots. Aaron Gordon, he was expected, like, Aaron Gordon was supposed to be out with a hamstring injury that game. Wound up playing, wound up starting, actually made a good impact early on in that game. And it felt like halfway through the first quarter, it was like, Oklahoma City, like, could this be their young moment? Could this be the moment we've been talking about all season? Oh, they're too young, too young, too young. Could this be the moment? They overcame that moment. And that right there in game 7, when you're down 10 to the Nuggets early on in that game, Aaron Gordon is playing well. Nobody on the Thunder can hit a shot. The Thunder are down 10 in a game 7 against a team who's been there before, who's won a championship. In that spot right there at home in that game 7, the Thunder overcome that 10-point deficit. They're leading by halftime. And not only are they leading, they're blowing out the Nuggets by halftime. And then eventually they surmount. And this is what, the Celtics, we saw the Celtics go out, what, a day or two before that game 7. The Celtics were down by as many as 41 points against the Knicks. Remember, that was just a complete massacre. The whole MSG crowd is having the best night of their lives. It's just amazing for all the Knicks fans. The Thunder, they were up by as many as 43 points in game 7 against the Nuggets. That blowout was even worse than the Celtics and Knicks. Like the Celtics Knicks was like pinnacle, like, oh, this is terrible. The Nuggets, they're up 10 in that game. They wound up losing by over 35 points, but they're down by as many as 43 in that spot. And that is a game I look at from the Thunder. I view that game as the turning point of the Thunder got over the second round hump. They were here last year. Should have got over the Mavericks. They didn't. They got over the Nuggets. They got over this hump in game 7. Now I feel like everything is almost downhill for them, knowing this team, yes, they're young, but they understand they can do it. They understand they can overcome the moments of adversity. But not only that, it's just looking at the teams out in the landscape of the NBA. Sometimes it's just about market. It's like who's available in the market, what's going on in the market. If the Thunder are sitting there going, no team plays as actively as us defensively, no team gets after it in transition as well as us, no team has the versatility, the depth that we have, the motivation. That's where the Thunder just, I think they've easily this season, we're talking about them in the NBA finals as minus 700 favorites nearly. They've just surpassed other teams. And I feel like the experience, I do want to give the credits, I do want to give credit to the Thunder a little bit, just from the experience factor, because yes, I still view them as very young. I still view the Thunder as like, okay, could this be a young spot? I have a note in here too, like what if OKC's second best player becomes Caruso again, similar to mid series versus Denver? I was thinking, game 4 against Denver, game 5 or game 4, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, 7 started to lean more towards OKC, but game 3, 4, and into 5, it felt like, ooh, OKC. Why their second best player is Caruso, is coming off the bench playing 24 minutes a night. Could this
Right.
be a concern later on down the line? I feel like there's a potential for it to be a concern in this series because there's always a potential for that to happen. The worst case scenario we all like to talk about, the rock bottom scenario. But I just think the Thunder have too many different areas they can go to, and I think there are too many areas of this series in which the Thunder are winning handedly. And not only that is, um, well, I wanted to rope in this point along with this is just I think both teams are mentally tough. I think both teams are mentally
Right.
tough. I think you
Yeah.
have to be mentally tough to make the NBA Finals, but just in terms of the mentality in this series, the Pacers are going to have a mentality that's not going to go away, a persisting, forceful mentality in the series as they've had throughout the playoffs. I think the Thunder, they're going to treat this the same way. And I just, even though the age is there for the Thunder, I'm not, I'm trying to remember my exact point here I had on the experience factor earlier, but it really just revolves around the fact that I think the Thunder's experience, they've gained experience through these NBA playoffs, and I don't think it's going to be at the end. I don't see it as something that could I don't see it as something that will bite them in the end. It could be something that occurs in this series at times. Like, could we see in a game four, like, oh yeah, the Thunder, like, what? They don't really have any options here on the road. What's going on? That could certainly happen, but I just don't see it overcoming everything the Thunder have. That's the thing. It's like we talk about experience, but at what point does that conversation, like, at what point is the experience conversation just negated from the fact of well, the Thunder just have
They're
the
just really.
way better team. Like
Yeah.
that's just the whole point of the Thunder all year. It's like they've had the better team. They have better team, better team, better team. We talked about experience, but they've just had the better team. And I think um, let's
Well,
see.
I also
OKC. No, go ahead. Because I
real
have
real
more things, but
quick,
go ahead.
real quick. I also do think when you look at experience, like touched on it earlier. It's like every concern you might have about OKC's experience blemishes, right? You could say the exact same thing about Indiana, right? Outside of Siakam, I guess Neesmith has been to a finals before, right? As a back of the bench guy, right? Like 2022 with the Celtics, he was there, but didn't really see any minutes, didn't really play. So anything you could talk about OKC in the experience department, I think it's fair. You could say the exact same thing about Indiana, right? If Indiana, they're up 2-1 in a game four back at their place, right? If they're experienced, they probably win that game against OKC, right? But is the inexperience going to bleed through, and are they going to allow OKC to win a game four, and which could be the nail, right? So everything you could say about OKC in the experience department, I think you could absolutely say about Indiana in the experience department. So I think that experience factor is kind of out the door this finals, and I really do just think it comes down to who plays a better 7 game, who plays better in 4 of the 7 games.
Yeah, and talk about experience too. I think what's important to mention within the line of experience is we kind of already touched on it here, but I think the two head coaches. What's funny is like you look at it, obviously throughout an NBA season, results are going to dictate narratives, right? Because, you win games, you are going to get a good narrative. And if you lose games, you're not. That's just kind of how the league works. But the coaches in this series, the coaches, there's some connections here with these two coaches. That is what I'll say, especially when it comes to obviously we're a Celtics program here. We love basketball, but we are our Celtics program who's very connected to the Boston Celtics. But the two coaches in this series, right? Mark Dagnall and Rick Carlisle. Those two coaches, I just think, obviously, I mean, to be a head coach in the NBA, you got to have a head on your shoulders, certainly. So, but I just think both of these coaches have been two of the more creative coaches in the NBA this season. Obviously, another person give a lot of praise to was Kenny Atkinson this season. Just the creativity he had within the the Cleveland Cavaliers organization. But Dagnault and Carlisle, two very experienced head coaches. Well, I should say very experienced for Carlisle. For Dagnault, a little less experience, but at the same time, still coached at Holy Cross, coached in the G League, coached as an assistant for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I just have a couple of tidbits to throw up here. First of all, Rick Carlisle, former Boston Celtic, and this is why I was just kind of trying to ad lib here to get these photos pulled up. But Rick Carlisle, former Celtic, back in the 1980s when we had Dan Shaughnessy on, he told a little bit of a told a couple of stories about Rick Carlisle during that interview. So
Celtic
everybody go check
champion
out.
too.
Yeah, Celtic champion. And look, number 34 before Paul Pierce. Not right before Paul Pierce, but the days before Paul Pierce, the old number 34. So Rick Carlisle, a connection to the Boston Celtics. But we also have another connection, not necessarily to the Boston Celtics, but to the Massachusetts, New England area. Not only to the New England and Massachusetts area, but to our own guy, Justin Lowe, because this doesn't really encapture right here. This is just a headline from a while ago. Dagnall named head coach to D League affiliate. This is when Dagnall was named the head coach of the Oklahoma City. Let's see, Oklahoma City 66ers. So obviously we've had the whole D League has changed. It's now the G League, the Gatorade League, and obviously the teams their names have changed as well. But Mark Dagnall, from the same hometown as our guy, Justin Lowe, Leominster, Massachusetts. Mark Dagnall from the same exact hometown as our guy, Justin Lowe.
Leominster.
What? Okay, yeah. Wait, say that again. I'm not. Where I'm from the Midwest.
I know.
I'm not from the Northeast.
Leominster.
Leominster. What did I say? Leominster.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
See,
okay,
that's
though.
the Midwest in me right there.
That is. That's all right. It's okay. It's okay.
But I'll say this, in St. Louis, we have a lot of French. We have a lot of French descendants around, right? There are a lot of words in St. Louis that are just we butcher 1,000, like gravois. Gravois. It's supposed to be gravois. It's gravois. It's gravois. Everybody in St. Louis knows it as gravois. Gravois. Yeah, but I'm glad you corrected me on that one, because I've always seen it as Leominster.
They're tough. They're tough.
So what is it? Wait, say it again. Say it again here.
Leominster.
Okay, because there's another one like David, our guy David on here. He always talks about it's what. Oh man, Haverhill, Massachusetts. It's like Haver, like people call it Haverhill or something. Like we'll have to get with David on that and talk about it. But yeah, Mark Dagnall. The whole point of the whole point is here, Massachusetts and New England native Mark Dagnall. So very connected with I want to say us up here, but I'm not up there. It's you, Rob. It's only you.
You're here in spirit.
Connect with Rob and
us up here. You're here.
But a New England connection for Mark Dagnall, and then of course with Rick Carlisle, former Boston Celtics. So two New England connections right there in the NBA Finals between the two head coaches. Always great to see that. And I was just praising, I was trying to praise the two head coaches before he threw up those images. Just both are two head coaches who are very creative. I've always gotten the most out of their players. I just think both of them too. It's very important to set culture and standards within any program and operation. And within the Pacers, I was listening to, I believe Zach Lowe was talking about this the other day. He was talking how in 21 or it was 21-22, the Pacers, their head coach was Nate Bjorken, and the whole team was the team was forming a mutiny against Bjorken halfway through the season, and nobody remembers the Pacers brought in Nate Bjorken, then right out the door, right out one season, right out the door. The Pacers just a couple of years ago, 4 seasons ago, welcomed in a head coach, and he walked right outside of the building. The Pacers, since coming upon Rick Carlisle, they've pretty well been a winning squad. They've been in the NBA playoffs, made 2 conference finals, now made an NBA finals. And then on the other end, Mark Dagnall, yes, there were a couple of years there where it was, let's just say it how it was. They were 2 terrible years for the Oklahoma City Thunder, one with Al Horford, one without Al Horford, in 21 and 22. But Dagnall comes in there. He sets a culture and a standard for that team. And obviously, you see they're in the NBA Finals now. Dagnall comes from a long line of coaching too. Just, I should say, his resume includes a nice timeline of coaching with Holy Cross, with the D League. He's been in the Thunder organization for nearly a decade. Dagnall's been, but just both of those head coaches, super super amazing, both of them, at just setting the culture, setting the tone, and just being creative. They're not only basketball minds, but they're culture builders, and that's what's so important. If any, we like to. I don't want to bring up Joe Mazzulla on this broadcast. We won't talk for
No,
30 minutes on
don't
Joe
do
Mazzulla
it.
here.
Don't do it.
But although Joe Mazzulla is not the best X's and O's head coach, there's a sense of culture and a
Right,
sense of
there is.
standard within the Celtics organization. That's what Dagnall and Carlisle brings to Indiana, Oklahoma City, and I think it's a big reason why both teams are in the NBA Finals. Um, Now, I will say, just to close out on a couple of things here, um, on this series. Let's see. OKC. Just skimming through notes at the end, as I always do. It's like I have 4 pages of notes. It's like, hey man, just skim through it, see if you missed
Well,
anything. There's really
we
what.
can't
See,
forget. We cannot forget to give our predictions. You cannot forget
oh
to give our
yes,
predictions.
yes, yes. So I'll start out with the predictions here. I think OKC in this series, they're going to play a little bit more small. They're going to be fast. They're going to be a little bit more downhill, more cutting, driving, attacking in this series defensively. I think they're going to be very active. I think Indiana, obviously, from this whole broadcast, I think Indiana is less than Oklahoma City, but it's not to say Indiana can't like I said, create chaos on the offensive end of the floor, get themselves cutters going to the rim, get themselves some easy opportunities potentially within putback settings and transition themselves. As we talked about with OKC this entire time, Indiana has the ability to create points in transition as well off of turnovers. And it's not to say Indiana can't create advantages for themselves in this series. It's just going to be really hard. I have the Oklahoma City Thunder in 6 games. I It's either 5 or 6 for me. I don't see a sweep. I don't see 7. Okay, I don't see 7 games. It's a little too long for me. A sweep would be very surprising. OKC, I think if Jalen Williams shows up in this series and he is a phenomenal scorer in the series, a secondary scorer, I think OKC has the potential to win it in 5. But I think they're going to be the team that steals a game. I think I think OKC can win solidly in 4 games. Like OKC win, OKC win. I think Indiana, they're going to have a game where they win. I think Indiana is going to have a game in which they absolutely 100% just outplay Oklahoma City, and at the end it's like, oh, it's say 118 to 100, something like that, right? Maybe game 3, game 4 in Indiana. Oklahoma City, they've in that Denver series, like I don't want to just, put down the Denver series. That's the thing. It's like Oklahoma City, they had 2 dominant series against the Grizzlies, which not putting too much stock in. Ja was out for half that series, and the Grizzlies were discombobulated. The Timberwolves, like, okay, they blew through the Timberwolves, but we talked about, you kind of snuffed it out during the conference finals preview. The Timberwolves had really played nobody up to that point. The
They probably shouldn't
Lakers,
have
who
been
were
there.
not, yeah, the Lakers and the Warriors. Obviously, the Warriors, no Steph in that series. The Lakers and the Warriors just didn't quite have enough when it came to playoff rotations and how to structure lineups, especially when a guy like Steph Curry is. I mean, that was just the obvious in the Golden State series. Maybe that goes the other. See, that's the thing. The Golden State series, that was kind of a toss up between Minnesota and Golden State. Minnesota had the upper hand in that series in terms of the odds, but Golden State wasn't too far behind them. Now, once Curry goes out of the lineup, Minnesota blows past them in 5 games, and that's it. But Oklahoma City, they gave away some games in that Denver series. Okay, game 6, they didn't close it out down the stretch. Game 3, they didn't close it out down the stretch either, lost in overtime. And then in game 1, they give up a big lead. Oklahoma City gives up a big lead to Denver, and we see that Aaron Gordon game winner, in which Oklahoma City, they had that game in hand down the stretch and completely pissed it away. I think with this Pacers team, looking at who Oklahoma City's faced this far, you could say Denver might have been their toughest opponent, obviously in terms of the games, but just in general, challenging Oklahoma City, Denver might have been Oklahoma City's toughest opponent. Indiana is going to be a little bit tougher of an opponent than Denver. They have more
Right.
depth than Denver. They're more lively, more active than Denver. Very different style of team, but I think they're going to challenge the Thunder a little bit more than any other team has challenged the Thunder. And I could see with Indiana's resume, I could see them stealing a game, maybe in Oklahoma City or maybe an extra game in this series period. I still think the Thunder are going to topple the Pacers in this series. I think they're going to run them over. I think they're going to clearly, by the end, we're just going to look at it and go, wow, yep, the Thunder were just clearly the better team in that series. But I don't deny that Indiana can't make it a little bit interesting and grab a game or two. Or not, I should say, they're going to grab at least one game. A second game, I think they have the possibility to do that, and I'm going to take Indiana in 6. I'm going to add on this point too. The Oklahoma City Thunder at home. Okay.
You take Oklahoma in
4?
6, right? Not Indiana.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, you're good.
Not taking Indiana in 6,
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
Hold up. I'm taking the Oklahoma City Thunder in 6. Right. Last series, I messed up the Timberwolves too, right? Like I was supposed to say Thunder. No. But Oklahoma City at home. 35-6 in the regular season, 8-1 in the playoffs. The only loss was to the Denver Nuggets in that game 1, the Aaron Gordon game winner. 43-7 in total at home for the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is extremely, extremely tough to win in Oklahoma City, as we've seen. 43-7 in 50 games at home this season for the Thunder. 43-7. 43-7. We saw with the Celtics last year, it was very hard to beat the Celtics at home. And when you're the road team, you need to steal a home game, or at least a road game. If you're the road team, you need to speak. If you're playing 3, 4, and 6 at your home floor, you have to win 1, 2, 5, or 7 on the road. The Oklahoma City Thunder do not give away games at home. This is one of the biggest, like we look at all these correlating factors of, can this team win the championship? Can they not? The championship winning teams, what's a huge correlating factor in all of them, including last year's Celtics team, dominant at home. Dominant at home. Hard to beat that team at home. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they are extremely tough to beat at home. Again, 43-7 in 50 games this season. It's going to be tough for Indiana to win a game on the road, and that just plays more of a factor too. And just the fact, I'm going to take Oklahoma City in 6 games in this series, straight up. 5, if it's 5, sure. 5 games, I wouldn't be surprised. 7, I would. 4, I would be surprised. But 6 games, I think that's the right amount of games for the series. I think Indiana's going to win one handedly. I think they're going to steal another one, and I think Oklahoma City, they're just going to blow, not necessarily blow them out, but I think they're going to run over them, and all the other wins they'll be able to grab in this series. And you're going to see the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're going to be holding up that Larry O.B. at the end of the 2024-25 season.
It's tough to make it. It's tough because this Pacers team, I got to put my bias aside. I love this Pacers team. I picked them as the top Celtics competitor. As soon as the Celtics went down, I was like, okay, this is the team that's going to go to the finals. They held true to they made me look good. And here they are. And I really, really, really believe the Pacers have a real shot at winning the NBA finals. But let me go through. I'm going to go game by game here. I'm going to get a little fun with it. Game 1, I think Oklahoma City comes out, right? And I think they take care of business. I think OKC, they're really tough to beat. Game 1, they win maybe the close game through 3.5, and then OKC extends that lead 10+. Game over. Game 1. Game 2, I think Indiana steals. I think they steal game 2 in those late game Indiana heroics that you see Halliburton or Siakam or Nesmith or Nembhard make a bunch of clutch shots down the stretch. OKC coughs that one up. I think OKC takes game 3 back in Indiana. Close game, kind of like game 1, but again, Indiana doesn't have enough to in the late portions. OKC takes that. Game 4, I'm going to say Indiana responds in the first blowout win of the series in a game 4, 15-point win. Game 5, coming back to Oklahoma, that's the next blowout win. OKC comes out. They take care of business. Game 6, I think this series goes 6. In Oklahoma City, I think they win the NBA Finals and they hoist that Larry O'Brien trophy in 6 games on Indiana's home floor in what is the SGA final piece of the masterclass. I think he shows out. I think he does this thing in game 6. I'll say it's a close game, back and forth, but OKC by like 11. Right. It's just like it's close, but it's not really close. It's like 7, and then it goes back to 15, and then it's back to 7, and it goes back to 15 until eventually OKC hosts it. But I will, and obviously MVP. I want to hear yours. My guess, if you're picking the Thunder, SGA. I'm going to say SGA. I do believe it. I do believe in Indiana, though. I do think there's a path to victory here against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I also will preface this. I've made my prediction. I'm going to stay true to that. I also see a world, like you said, where it's like a Thunder steamroll 5. Indiana gets a frisky game 3, probably, kind of like we saw in Orlando against Boston, win game 3. And then it's just like, no, this is the best team in the league. They're showing it. Indiana's path. Was it a little weird? So, but I see both of those worlds.
Yeah, for me, I would not be shocked if it was like you said, a steamroll Oklahoma City Thunder 5-game series. I think 6. I think it's going to be a 6-game series where it's like I see it as I don't know how to compare this because so the conference finals, right? The way that went about, the Pacers were ahead for most of that conference finals, both in terms of games and in terms of the score. Outside of game 1, right? The Pacers were kind of controlling that series. I think that's what we're going to see with this series, where the Thunder are going to control the majority of moments in the series. I think we're going to see a game where the Pacers just play well. They're going to win. And then I think there's going to be another game where, yes, the Thunder are controlling, but then the Pacers, they're right there at the end. And then it's kind of up in the air. And then all of a sudden the Pacers grab that game.
Well,
But
also, real quick, sorry. If the Pacers, so actually you finish your point.
No. Go ahead. Cause I'm kind of tangenting real quick.
Okay. So to play kind of off your Indiana cannot go down 3-1. If they go down 3-1, this is a 5-game series, right? Like they're not pulling off like a game 5 upset. Like if OKC has a chance to close it out, the series at their place, they're going to win that game, right? So I think if Indiana wants to win, it has to be in 6 somehow. And if they want to prolong the series, they cannot go down 3-1. You just can't. If you lose a game, you have to respond. Plain and simple.
What's funny is you say that, it almost makes it feel like this is probably actually going to be a 5-game series because I'm looking at it, I'm like, I think Indiana can win 1 of the first 4. But if you're talking like they're down 3-1 going back into OKC for game 5, it is going to be really tough to get that to 6. It's going to be really tough. And I'll just say this, OKC and Indiana, OKC, they're going to have more options of how to play this series compared to Indiana, just in general. But I was going to add on this point too, along with that. Totally forgot what I was going to say here. Oh yeah, in the regular season. Okay, so these two teams, right? Add another aspect onto these two teams in terms of just the predictions, everything. In the regular season, the Thunder beat the Pacers twice. Now, the Thunder beat everybody in the regular season, literally every single team. The only team the Celtics didn't beat this season, it was the Oklahoma City Thunder, believe it or not. Out of every single team this season, the Celtics, the only team the Celtics don't have a win against is against the Oklahoma City Thunder. 0-2. Only 0-2 squad, straight up, out of the entire league. But Chet Holmgren did not play in those regular season games against the Indiana Pacers. Chet Holmgren in this series, I don't think we've given him enough conversation. Him and Jalen Williams and even SGA, they could have a breakout series. And they've had series that you could call breakout series or moments, sure. But in the NBA Finals, Chet didn't play those games in the regular season against Indiana. Siakam and Turner, they could struggle containing Chet. And this kind of goes in with the conversation of MVP. SGA is 100% the most obvious answer here. But just from all the ways, like the way I think Oklahoma City is going to win the series is obviously off of defense, but just playing in multiple ways. So I do wonder if somebody else could come up and grab the NBA. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, could Jalen Williams have himself a good enough series? Could Holmgren have himself just a defensive masterclass of a series to the point where it's like, maybe Shea. This is the thing. It's going to be really hard for Shea not to win the MVP just because of his scoring numbers.
Narratives. That's the narrative there, right?
Right, because Holmgren could have an amazing series. He could average 15, 12, and 3 blocks a game. But then say if SGA just averages 25, 5, and 5, it's like it's probably going to go to SGA under those circumstances. But I just wonder because I think OKC, just because of the million ways they have to play versus Indiana. Indiana doesn't have as many ways to play as Oklahoma City. Just from that versatility alone, I do wonder in this spot if somebody else could steal the Finals MVP. But I think it's just going to be easy. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander on Indiana side. Indiana side. See, it's like Finals MVP. I understand like people value Finals MVP because it means you played well in the biggest moment, right? But it's like it's gonna be Shea if it's the Thunder. If it's the Pacers, it's gonna be Halliburton or Siakam. I was very shocked to see Siakam as the Eastern
So was
Conference Finals
Halliburton. So was
MVP,
Halliburton.
which is funny because you look back, it's like the Celtics moments. Brown and Tatum were like celebrating for each other, and then you see the Halliburton moment, you're like, oh, okay. But it's gonna be those guys like Halliburton, Siakam, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. I just wonder if somebody else could creep back. Like, can Chet
And
creep into that
a little
conversation? Because
Andre
Chet, like
Iguodala situation.
the one right, it's like the one thing about Chet is he didn't play in the regular season against this matchup. So what if he comes in and he's actually the not difference I like not the difference maker in terms of the regular season matchup to now, because let's face it, the Thunder won those games anyway, but say he's the difference maker in the sense of bringing the Thunder to just this dominant level in the
Dominant,
series. Like,
yeah.
oh, nobody can get through Chet. Like they can't get anything going at the rim. He's hitting his three ball. It's hard for an off the ball player to win,
It
an
is.
MVP of a series. But I wonder if there's a pathway. Otherwise, it's easy. It's SGA. Literally all season, he's been the favorite to win Finals MVP. It's been like him, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown. Like that's been like the top three all season. And for me now, looking at it going into June, this final series, I go, what's changed? I mean, this was he was the favorite back in December to win Finals MVP. It's like it's June and he's actually in the finals. Like give me SGA all the way. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the clear cut answer here for Finals MVP.
Yeah, I'm with you. SGA, and then I mean, like Siakam or Halliburton. I think either one of those. Like, I don't see a world where Miles Turner or Nimhard or like Neesmith. Like, there's just not going to be there. Like, I can see a Chet world. Like, again, if SGA comes out and life's tough on him, and you see Chet come out there, 18 points, 12, 13 rebounds, 3-4 blocks, like just
It would
dominating.
be the
Maybe.
blocks. It would be the rim protection for Chet. It would be
Yeah.
like it would be because I don't think people understand that Chet is seriously a Gobert level of defender by the rim. Like
Oh
Gobert, the
yeah.
way he deters guys by the rim, that is where Chet is right now. But he's so young that number one, like people don't expect that out of a young player who's in his second year, basically his third year. He's in his Ben Simmons third year right now, but he's in his
Right.
true second year. Um, because people don't expect that out of a young guy like that, and just he's seen as like I've always seen him as like, can he be? He's not as fluid as Kevin Durant, like as a scorer at this point in time, but he has the size and scoring ability, and you wonder, okay, can this guy be a forward with the ball in his hands that kind of does more than because he came into the league, people were kind of comparing him to Al Horford a little bit, where it's like, okay, pick and pop big, stretch the floor, rebound, defense, all those great things, but he's not necessarily a ball handler, right? He's not an off the
Right.
dribble scorer. Can Chet kind of become like people are thinking, can he kind of become an off the dribble scorer here? But that's not even like if he achieved that's where I'm thinking Chet. What's crazy about this Thunder team is they have an MVP in SGA. And that you'll say, oh, well, they have the MVP in SGA. That's not even the best component of their team. The best component of their team is their defense. And it's headlined by a guy like Chet Holmgren down there as a protector by the rim. But just what makes it so insane is they have the MVP. That's not even their best component. And Chet Holmgren, who's on the roster, in my mind, could be a future MVP of the league because if he puts together that off the dribble scoring repertoire in the future, and he's still the rim protector he is, that is certainly somebody who could be a force to be reckoned with in the future as the league, one of the league's best players, period. And we're talking about him in year two right now, potentially winning the NBA Finals with this Thunder club who already harbors an MVP. And not only that, is their best component is their team defense. Their team defense is is their best component, their spearhead of their squad. They have the MVP, and they also have Chet Holmgren, who could legitimately be a future MVP of the league. I don't know what's going on in Oklahoma City. 10 years ago, we saw Harden, Westbrook, Durant all play in Oklahoma City together, 3 MVPs on the same roster. Jalen Williams, we'll see where he ascends to in his career, but in terms of Chet and SGA, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they like those are like obviously SGA just won the MVP, but Chet could win the MVP in the future. I'm gonna put that out there. I was a
Sounds
huge
like
Chet guy coming into the league. I was Chet over Boncaro and Jabari Smith, straight up. Like
ooh,
I'm not like honestly to this day, Boncaro or Chet, either one of them. I think they fell into the right situation. I think
no doubt.
I don't think Chet would be as good in Orlando as he is in Oklahoma City, and I don't think Boncaro would be as good as in Oklahoma City as he is in Orlando. I think they just fell into the right situations, but. Um, yeah, I'm a Czech guy. I mean, I would be nice to see uh I would be nice to see somebody really play well in this series and have a break. I want to see I think Oklahoma City, the couple of guys on Oklahoma City, they have the chance to really change the narrative. I think the Pacers, I pointed out in round 2 before the Cavs series, I was going, Pacers have the chance to change the narrative about themselves here as a real legitimate contender, and they did. They beat the Cavs, they made the Eastern Conference Finals, they made the NBA Finals. They did. I think Chet and Jalen Williams, we would talk about, oh, too young, too young, too young. They could really change the narratives about themselves in this series, whether it's Jalen Williams being a scorer, being that secondary guy for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then Chet Holmgren, I think he could be just the fact both these teams we have to think too. Midwest market teams. The road goes through St. Louis. If you're going from Indianapolis to Oklahoma City, you're taking 70 across the Indiana border into Illinois, through St. Louis to Missouri. Then you're connecting to 44. You're going on the little interchange, right? In downtown St. Louis. You're taking 44 all the way to Oklahoma City. So 70 to 44. The road goes right through St. Louis, these two Midwest markets here. Not too many people like they're not as the Knicks, the Lakers, the Celtics, all of the popular teams out there. The Thunder and the Pacers, they're not as popular. That's where I feel as if these two teams, they have players who could really change the narratives about themselves or change the narratives not only about themselves but their team in this series in its entirety. And I think that could be primarily just looking at it, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren for being two young guys that, yeah, for it's fair to look at young guys and go, oh, are they able to do this? Are they able to do that? Um, but eventually, those young guys, they answer they answer the questions. They answer the questions whether yes or no. And I think Jalen Williams and Chet, I think this series right here could be a big series for both of them because Chet didn't play in the regular season against the Pacers. A lot like the known is better than or the unknown is better than the known. And then Jalen Williams, we've already went through it with him. If he's their second scoring option and he's consistent, like that's really going to boost the Oklahoma City Thunder's ability to win the series because they're going to win it on defense. And if they're hitting on offense, it's like forget it, Indiana, forget it. And that's pretty well. I mean, just kind of skimming through notes again here. That's pretty well all I have in this series. I mean, Indiana may be the most equipped team to deal with OKC mentally out of any team because mentally OKC just drain squads. Both teams dominated the turnover battle and possession battle in the playoffs so far, which we talked about was important for the Celtics against the Magic and the Knicks. Both of those teams, both the Pacers and the Thunder have they've dominated the possession battle for themselves, whether it's uh, like getting more offensive possessions, whether it's creating turnovers or not turning the ball over. Both teams are two of the best teams transition wise, best transition scoring teams in this series. So you're gonna have those two things playing out. Let's see. Anything else I want to add here just at the end? Energy is going to be a big aspect of the series. Fast-paced series. The new guard is finally taken over in this series. Just this series goes against narrative, period, of slow, grinded out, slow pace series, veteran-led, slow pace series. That's what we typically see the NBA playoffs as. This is the young guard. These aren't necessarily the most grizzled veterans in the league, and this is going to be a fast-paced series. It's not going to be a slow-paced series with veterans. It's going to be a younger, fast-paced series, and I think that's going to be a fun series to view at the end. Like, I think people are gonna have fun watching this series. I think
I agree.
people are poo-pooing the series because, oh, no LeBron, no KD, no Steph, no whoever, right? Oh, two small Midwest market teams. The quality of play in this series is about to be at a peak this decade. Like, I think easily when you look at, now there's 5 more years in the decade, but say when we get to 2030, right? I think the 2025 NBA Finals could be the 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 most fun final series to watch this decade, just from a visual standpoint. The speed, the up tempo, the points that could be in this series. I think this is going to be I think this is going to be a fun series to watch ultimately. And that's pretty much all I got here on the 2025 NBA Finals. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
OKC generally more quicker, more athletic team. Oh, let's mention this: the paths. Indiana faces Milwaukee round one, 5 games. Round two, Cleveland, 5 games. Round three, New York in 6 games. A little more physical of a series. OKC, Memphis in round one, Denver 7 gamer in round two. That adds something to the resume there, both in terms of the stamina later on down the line, but also just the playoff experience. Coming off the conference finals though, Oklahoma City, a little a little easier of a conference finals. 5 games, blew out the Minnesota Timberwolves in 4 of the 5 games. Meanwhile, on the other end, as I mentioned, Indiana, close game, close game, close game against the New York Knicks. Coming off an emotional close series and coming into another series, that's when we typically see teams, they don't start out as well. And if the Pacers aren't going to start out as well as the Thunder in this series, they're going to be in deep trouble. That could play a factor in this series. But ultimately, I'll say this: both teams resting for what, nearly a week, so maybe that doesn't play a factor in the series whatsoever. But OKC coming in a little more rested, a little more rested than the Pacers, who also, I'll mention this: Neesmith sprained ankle. Talked about the forward rotations earlier. Is that going to play a factor in this series? Well, if Aaron Neesmith cannot play like, we know how Aaron Neesmith plays. Aaron Neesmith, he is somebody who is just he's somebody who is an extremely active player. He's all over the floor defensively, offensively, hard cutter, just a high energy type of player. We remember him during his time with the Celtics. But Aaron Neesmith, if he's compromised in this series, again, we talked about the forward rotations earlier. It's like, can can does Indiana, do they have enough forwards basically in this series if Aaron Neesmith is compromised? I do want to throw up one more thing here real quick, just to remind people, if we can get this, let's see. If we can get this pulled up real quick. So Aaron Neesmith, drafted by the Celtics in 2020. He was drafted 14th overall. And the Celtics, it's funny, we're talking a lot about, oh, Drew Holiday this summer, Celtics moving off of Drew Holiday, yada, yada, yada. Well, originally the Celtics, the reason they have Drew Holiday is because of Aaron Neesmith. Aaron Neesmith, it was traded for Malcolm Brogdon, uh, 3 summers ago now, which is crazy. 3 summers ago in 2022, to the Indiana Pacers. Celtics get Malcolm Brogdon in return. They obviously send out Tice and other guys in that deal as well. But ultimately, the Celtics get Brogdon in that deal. And in the next offseason, the Celtics go and flip Malcolm Brogdon for Drew Holiday. So Aaron Neesmith, talk about him being a big impact in the series. I gotta say, I'm proud of our guy Aaron Neesmith, because I wish, oof, I'm not gonna be able to find it in my camera roll in time. But I wish we had the post game screenshot of us from
The free
2021.
the free Aaron
Free
Neesmith.
Aaron Neesmith.
Yeah, yeah, I
Free Aaron
remember that.
Neesmith. Straight up. Because we knew his potential. We knew his potential as an NBA player. And that's the thing about this series is, Aaron Neesmith could end up being a big fact. Like, we talk about the X factors in this series, Aaron Neesmith could end up being a fairly big factor in this series. And when I say that, it's really about his availability, right? His availability in being out on the floor because of that sprained ankle for the Pacers, that could ultimately be something that plays plays a huge factor in the series for the Pacers, whether or not they're actually able to compete. But I do want to pull this up real quick, as it's taken me forever to get up here. Um, some technical difficulties, but I do want to pull up just of the past, right? Just to show people of the past. Again, I wish we had the screenshots from our former post games out on Aaron Neesmith, but just got to remind people, Aaron Neesmith, the young buck in Aaron Neesmith against his future team in the Indiana Pacers. This was a photo from back in, I believe, 2021. Aaron Neesmith going against the Pacers. Uh, just a simple photo here. Aaron Neesmith with the Boston Celtics. It's just got to give him his credit because what he did in game one against the Knicks, utterly astounding. Utterly astounding. 8 of 9 from three, 6 straight threes down the stretch. 52% three-point shooter coming out of college on a low volume. We knew he was advertised. Aaron Neesmith was advertised as a three-point shooter coming into the league, but we all know he was much more than that. He was much more than just a three-point shooter, just a tenacious defender. He was very active defender, and was never going to work out in Boston with Brown and Tatum. Just didn't have the reps, didn't have the minutes there. But once moved to Indiana, obviously found himself a home there, and has now made a couple of nice playoff runs. Eastern Conference Finals last year, Finals this season. So just had to bring up Aaron Neesmith and the impact in which he could potentially have in this series with the sprained ankle. We talked about Indiana's forward rotations not being as valid, as tangible as Oklahoma City's. Aaron Neesmith has will play a huge factor in that. And I sprained his ankle last series. We'll have to see if that plays a bigger factor coming into this series, whether or not he's healthy. But I just want to pull up that photo of Aaron Neesmith. I'm sorry it took me forever to get that. I was trying to edit the background and it kept like anybody who deals with Pixar, it's like you mess up and you save a photo and it's not right, and they send you to an ad and then you have to close out the ad. And anyway, behind the scenes nonsense. Behind the scenes nonsense. We gotta
Yes,
square
well,
away here. Anything for
I'm
Aaron Neesmith, though. Anything for Aaron Neesmith.
yeah, I
Our
was gonna
guy.
say Neesmith. Wasn't going to work out in Boston. We knew that. But from an Indiana perspective, like what a trade that was. You give up Malcolm Brogdon, who was kind of like an aging guy. And this is a win-win trade. And Neesmith is not what Boston needed. Matt Brogdon was not what Indiana needed. Here they are. They get this youngish, because I believe he was a 4-year college guy. I believe he came into the league if I'm not mistaken. I think he was a 3-4 year guy.
I think he might have been a 2-year guy.
2-year guy. So I think
know.
he's they got the youngish guy. And he's really worked out. I mean, that game one against the New York Knicks is going to go down in Indiana Pacers history. I just want to say before we close out, I'm excited for this series. This finals is going to be a lot of fun. And I think I said this at the start of the show. I'll say it at the end of the show. I think it is a basketball head's dream to watch these two teams play, because it's going to be a lot of versatility, a lot of fast-paced play, a lot of good shot selection, a lot of good coaching. It's just going to be really good hoops. And personally, I do think it's going to be a really closer series than some people might expect. And I think I don't think it's good for the league in terms of like revenue and all that. It's a different conversation. I don't think it's good for them there. I do think it's going to be really great fan. If you love basketball, you're going to want to turn on the Indiana Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder NBA Finals series, because it's just going to be pure entertainment, like plain and simple.
Yeah, this could be one of the better series that happen there is a
could be the
chance that this is
Thunder. Yeah, there is a
actually
chance the Thunder roll them over.
There's a chance the Thunder roll them over, but I think even within that rollover, the style of play, like again, this goes against every narrative of the NBA playoffs. The narrative is typically veteran-led squad, slow-paced, half-court offense. This series is going to be running up and down, points, defense, turnovers. We're going to see a lot. Like these two teams are very young too. Like the Thunder are very young. The Pacers are fairly young for who they are. They think about 2 seasons ago. 2 seasons ago in 22-23, the Thunder were the 10 seed and made the play-in tournament. And then the Pacers, let's see, in 23, where were they at in the playoffs that year? Trying to
That
think
was the year
of
they
the
traded for
bracket.
Halliburton, and I believe they were.
No, that was the year afterwards. That was the year afterwards. Let's see. So I'm not sure
Oh,
they
you're right.
made. Wait. We'll bring this up real quick. We'll bring this up. So 23 NBA standings. Okay. Let's see where Indiana was at. I don't remember. I do not remember. Yeah, okay. They barely
11th.
missed the play-in game. Barely. So in 2023, the Indiana Pacers were 11th in the East, 35-47. Missed the play-in game by 5 games. All right. They were the 11th seed. They missed the 10 slot by 5 games in the play-in tournament. Meanwhile, on the other end of the conference, Oklahoma City, they were the 10 seed that year at 40-42. So both these teams 2 years ago, both under 500. Oklahoma City 10th in the West. They made the play-in. They beat the Pelicans in game 1 of the play-in. However, were absolutely trounced by the Timberwolves in game 2. The Timberwolves go on to play the Nuggets in the first round that year as the 8th seed, but the Thunder had the chance to be the 8th seed that season, and they didn't quite make it through. They wound up being 10th in the end. So 2 seasons ago, 11th for the Pacers, 10th for the Thunder. Now 2 seasons later, they're here in the NBA Finals. They're two teams in the past where you could definitely pin them as up and coming teams, but nobody knew they were going to be here this quickly. Nobody knew, oh, the Pacers and Thunder were going to be here this quickly. Again, 2 seasons ago, both under 500, both pinned as teams who were on the up and come up, who were on the come up for certain. But to have this kind of rise is just absolutely extraordinary, and I think it's going to make for a great NBA Finals. There's a lot of parity, again, a lot of youth, a lot of new faces in the mix, and there's just going to be more liveliness, more activity, more pace in this series. It's going to be it's a very different matchup in series than what we've seen, a different series matchup than what we've seen in the past, this decade, and way beyond this decade, into the 2010s and 2000s. This is a final series that I don't think we've ever had a final series including 2 teams with the complexity of these of the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. Again, they're just both very young, very lively, the new faces. I'm not sure we've ever had an NBA Finals where we could say, oh, 2 fast-paced teams, 2 young, fast-paced teams who are just gonna who aren't gonna be grinded out, slow-paced teams. They're
Right.
just, it's not gonna work out that way in these NBA Finals. And even if it's a 5-game series, I still think the product on the floor is going to be entertaining. That's what's so funny. I don't want to get into this conversation fully, but at the beginning of the season, everybody, oh, the league, they shoot too many threes, and like they all play the same. They all play the same. This, I'm sorry. Anybody who's about to watch this NBA final series, watch this final series and then go watch, let's
Denver.
see, maybe
Denver,
the
OKC.
1990 NBA finals between
Oh,
the.
you're talking eras. Okay.
No, I'm just saying, like, people at the beginning of the season were, oh, I miss 80s and 90s basketball. And it's like, you
Right.
really miss back to the basket, slow paced, like we're watching, not watching paint dry, but it's like, we could be doing either or right now versus what we're about to see right here in this Thunder Pacers matchup, where we're like, the cameraman better get his shoulders ready. He's gonna be going up and down the court, like he's gonna be like, okay, like, let me get this. Which I know, like, they have that like gyrating thing on the camera, but gotta get a little torque in himself for this series. You know, it's gonna be up and down the court. Oh, okay.
It is. It is.
See that we didn't see that in the past, and I think that's going to bring an entertainment level that people don't expect, even if it's a 5-game series or a 4-game series or a non-competitive series. I still think the style of play is going to come through and entertain people in a way that they don't expect.
I agree. And it should be fun. Tip off is this Thursday, 8:30. That's on ABC, obviously. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun one, guys. Thank you so much for joining in and watching in this NBA Finals preview. It's a shame it's not the Boston Celtics. However, you know, anytime we can talk hoops, it's a good time. When we'll see us live next is a good question. Who knows? Stay tuned. If you're not following us on our social media, guys, please go do that for us. Celtics Talk Weekly links will be in the description, I believe. Guys, and as always, until next time, I know they're not playing, but go Boston Celtics.
And go NBA. Great era in the NBA right now.
Yes,
go
sir.
NBA.